afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday Talk series on social, political, and economic perspectives of the capability building on innovative leadership for legislative staff or the CIBILS program. I am Danielisa Zambrano. You can call me Ice from the Development Academy of the Philippines, and I am pleased to be your host for today's lecture. To formally begin, may I ask everyone to pay courtesy of our flag with the singing of the national anthem.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, hanap ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay.
Pangidihang, duyan ka ng magiting,
sa manlulupi, di ka pasisingil.
Sa dagat ang tulong, sa simoy at sa langit mong lugaw, may dilag ang tula at awit sa pagdayang minamahal.
Ang islap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdidingding.
Ang bituin at araw na kailan pa may magdidiin.
You may now settle down. Thank you. Once again, a pleasant afternoon, everyone, to our participants in Zoom and Facebook, and to our guests here with us at the DAP Pasig. We are truly honored that today's lecture is graced by our distinguished set of speakers, bringing in perspectives from the academe, international institutions, national and local government, and civil society. Allow me to recognize those who are here with us already. Dr. Marie Diguinal-Gillian, Associate Professor from the University of the Philippines Asian Institute of Tourism. Mr. Shuji Kimura, Senior Transport Specialist from Asian Development Bank. We also have Director Nessa Mendoza, Service Director from the Department of Transportation, Planning and Project Development Office, Transport Policy and Planning Service. We have Ms. Aliana May Bernadette, Traffic Operation Officer of the Quezon City Government, Traffic and Transport Management Department, and Ms. Patricia Mariano, Director and Co-Founder of Alt Mobility PH. Welcome, ma'am and sir. Of course, welcome to our dear viewers from Zoom Room, our participants from the Philippine Congress, including our civil scholars from the Senior Leaders Track, and of course, our Facebook Live viewers. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. We have quite a good number with us here already on Zoom, around 91 participants, and I am sure all of us are excited about today's topic. But just to break the ice, and since our theme is about public transportation, I want to hear from our dear viewers through this short activity. We have prepared this poll for everyone. So on our screen, here is our poll question. On average, how many hours a day do you spend commuting to and from work? I will repeat the poll question. On the average, how many hours a day do you spend commuting to and from work? So for heart reaction, we have 30 minutes. For 1 hour, we have thumbs up. For our 2 hours, we have laugh. And for 3+ hours, oh no, we have cry react. Okay, so we can see some reactions. We have 30 minutes. I think they are riding a carpool or Grab. Ganun po siguro, 30 minutes. Or they're riding MRT or Angkas. Move it, yung mga TNV po natin. We also have thumbs up, 1 hour. Anything else from our Zoom participants? Oh, I think wala pong nakakaranas ng 3+ hours, no? Ay, meron po tayo. Meron po tayong reactions from our Zoom participants. All right. So I think thank you very much for your reaction, Zoom participants. And I hope our energy has been fired up, hopefully not for recalling your experiences on commuting or traveling. As early as now, we encourage everyone to submit your questions for our resource persons. You may send them through Zoom chat, the link provided by our team. For our civil scholars, you can also send it through your respective Viber communities, and those joining us via Facebook Live may also post their questions in the comment section, which our team will consolidate them. We will reserve all questions for the open forum later in the program. So, let us now proceed. I am sure you're all excited as I am to begin. We're here today for our third and last lecture for this year's Thursday Talk series. Throughout this year's series, we have taken meaningful stops along learning journey. We began by examining how representation can be strengthened in our democratic institution. Our next stop brought us to the global stage, where we explored how governments navigate an increasingly uncertain geopolitical environment. Those conversations have challenged us to think more critically about governance and policymaking. And now, we arrive at our final stop, one that brings us to an experience shared by millions of Filipinos every single day: public transportation, or as it more commonly called, commuting. Every journey begins with a destination in mind. Yet, for millions of Filipinos, the journey itself has become one of the greatest daily hardships. Hours spent waiting and traveling, choosing or transferring between way too many modes of transport, congested roads, and uncertain travel times. These have become such familiar experiences that many of us simply accept as part of everyday life. Things we endure just to make it to school, to work, to personal errands, and simply to go home. And somewhere between hours of sitting or standing during our commutes, many of us have probably thought, ganito na lang ba forever? May pag-asa pa kayang magbago ang public transportation sa bansa? They're not merely commuter frustrations. These are policy questions. Questions about how we plan cities, deliver public service, and ultimately improve lives. Dear audience, this is where our journey today begins, with the simple yet profound questions of our Filipino commuters. Let us take it one step further, not simply if change is possible, but how we can make it happen. How can we create a public transportation system that is efficient, responsive, and centered on the needs of Filipino commuters? To formally set the stage for this afternoon's discussion, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator who will guide us through today's conversation. Attorney John Francis Ponancilio currently serves as the Committee Secretary of the Committee on Transportation in the House of Representatives. In his capacity, first as Committee Legislative Staff Officer and later as a Committee Secretary, he has begun instrumental in the passage of numerous landmark transportation laws, including the Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act, Student Fare Discount Act, Anti-Distracted Driving Act, and the Road Speed Limiter Act, among many others. His extensive work has enabled him to collaborate closely with government agencies, private sector, stakeholders, and civil society on key transportation issues. A licensed engineer and lawyer, Attorney Panancilio earned both his engineering and law degrees from the University of St. LaSalle and was admitted to the Philippine Bar in 2017. Please welcome Attorney John Francis Panancilio. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ice, for that kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third and final installment of the Thursday Talks, a lecture series organized by the Development Academy of the Philippines under the CBILS program. As a former CBILS participant, it is an honor to guide you in our discussion today. I'd like to begin with a question our host just posed. How do we build a public transportation system that truly serves the needs of the Filipino people? This is not a novel question. For decades, policymakers, planners, transport experts, and commuters themselves have tried to navigate the best path forward. More often than not, we have approached the issue as an engineering challenge. Build more roads, expand rail networks, procure more buses. These are all necessary. Yet, despite decades of infrastructure investments, the daily realities of the many Filipino commuters remain unchanged. Perhaps, the challenge is not only about building better transport systems, but also about building better ways of listening. With that, let us watch the short video.
Bawat biyahe may binabahaging kwento. Bawat commute, bunga ng maraming pagpapasya. Para kanino nga ba ginawa ang ating mga lungsod? Sa bawat galaw, kani-kaninong mga boses nga ba ang nangingibabaw? Ang urban transport ay hindi lang basta kalsada, tulay, riles o sasakyan. Higit sa lahat, ito ay tungkol sa mga tao. Ngunit, bakit nga ba tila nawawala ang boses ng ating mga commuter, transport workers, mga siklista, mga pedestrian, at mga komunidad sa mga desisyong araw-araw naman silang naaapektuhan? Inilalagay ng Participatory Transport Planning ang mga mamamayan sa sentro ng paggawa ng mga panukalang batas. Nagiging instrumental ang kanilang pang-araw-araw na karanasan sa pagbuo ng mga solusyong epektibo at inklusibo. Ang mga sistema ng transportasyon ay higit na nagiging mas ligtas, mas maginhawa at mas angkop sa pangangailangan ng bawat mamamayan tuwing sila ay napakikinggan. Sa inklusibong pagpaplano, ang mga lungsod natin nagiging mas madaling galawan, mas produktibo at mas matatag para sa mga susunod pang henerasyon. Paano nga ba mahihikayat ng batas ang makabuluhang pakikilahok ng nakararami? Paano nga ba tayo makasusulong mula sa simpleng pakikipanayam tungo sa tunay na kolaborasyon? At paano nga ba natin magagamit ang datos at boses ng ating mga mamamayan upang hubugin ang kakayahang kumilos ng bawat Juan? Samahan ninyo kami sa ikatlo at huling episode ng Thursday Talks Lecture Series at suriin natin kung paano makatutulong ang participatory planning sa paglikha ng mga sistema ng transportasyon na tunay na inuuna ang mga taong kanilang pinaglilingkuran.
That clip shows the sad state of our transport system, and that is the main reason why we are here today. Today's lecture focuses on an often overlooked aspect of transport governance, the feedback gap in public transport planning. Much of the discussion centers on infrastructure investments. Equally important, however, is ensuring that commuters have meaningful opportunities to share their experiences and to help shape policies. For policymakers and legislative practitioners like us, the challenge is clear. How do we ensure commuter sentiments are not only heard, but also translated into evidence that informs policy making? This question lies at the very heart of today's lecture. Together, let us explore how transport policies can be informed, not only by technical expertise, but also by the sentiments of everyday Filipino commuters. We begin with our first stop. Session 1 invites us to rethink the role of Filipino commuter, not just passengers, but as stakeholders whose insights can help shape transport systems. Through local and regional cases, we will explore how citizen participation can complement technical design and planning, and ultimately influence policymaking in the transport sector to be more responsive, inclusive, and grounded in the lived realities of everyday commuters. To guide us through the session, allow me to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is an associate professor at the Asian Institute of Tourism and a research and extension fellow at the National Center for Transportation Studies of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She is also an affiliate faculty member of the Department of Architecture of UP Mindanao. Her research focuses on transport policy, sustainable mobility, climate change, and transportation tourism, with publications in leading international journals and book chapters from Routledge and Emerald Publishing. A former senior advisor of GIZ for Transport and Climate Initiatives in ASEAN and the Philippines, she continues to collaborate with government and development partners to advance inclusive, sustainable, and climate-responsive mobility and tourism across Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Marie Danielle Guillen.
Thank you so much for a very nice introduction, Attorney Panancilio. Good afternoon, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. I'm Danielle Guillen, and I'm one of the first lecturer for this session, Talk Thursdays. It's my first time actually to be your speaker here in the Development Academy of the Philippines, and I'm very, very glad that this topic has been chosen. I think all of us could relate. So my title, actually, this was the topic given to me by the, from commuters to co-planners. And in their email to me, it's how one can help build better mass transit. So I added how one or Juana or Juanita and Juanito can actually help build better mass transit, because I think at the end of it, we would like to really have a very inclusive kind of mass public transport services. So for my topic, I made this outline. Of course, I have a little bit of an introduction. I think a very important part of this lecture is about why citizen feedback matters in mass transit. And probably this is the role of everyone. And the Philippine feedback gap, where is the gap? Can we do from consultation to co-planning? Can we learn from successful participatory projects? Do we have successful participatory projects? What are the policy options? Can we really make participation institutional? And what is the future? So it's all about smart cities. We always say smart citizen, but I think I have to add smart caring citizens. So here you can see, wherever I walk, that photo would say, every time I see the problem in our transportation service, there's always the why, right? So I think this is the reason why we're all here. So allow me to start, with a day in the life of one. Earlier, I think our MC and moderator asked, what's really a day in the, and you have a video on the life of a one or a Juana. So here's the picture. So my first question is, I hope none of you is really working from home. So if you if you travel to your office, I'd like to ask, what is your first mode of transportation? So can you give me a heart sign if it's MRT or LRT? No? So if you see, well, I cannot see right now, but yeah, how many can actually relate? This is one of I think a common scene that you can see in Quezon Avenue, and this was taken, if I'm not mistaken, early morning, because I took this photo. And then you can see some of the photos. There's a bus like running. There are motorcycle taxis. There are jeepney. There are tricycles, e-trikes, and trikes. So I hope all can relate with our public transport. How many? Oh, there's a thumb up sign. So I hope, how many of you really use public transport? Can I see hearts, thumbs up? More thumbs up? None? How about TNVS or taxis? Should we give it what? A smiley? I think. So I think from the thumbs up or the smiley, which we'll see, there's like an equal, How many are actually walking? Are many of you, can you do walking or cycling? Do we have cycling? Can we see heart sign? I think it's very important. Oh, there's some, right? They're walking, just walking to work, no? Meaning we're transit-oriented, I suppose. If you can actually also walk to your destination or even to school. So I think this is the typical life of one, no? The majority of ours is really using public transport. Sorry. So here you can see typical transport scenes on the road. So I have a question. Who knows the transport system better? Is it the planner who designed it or the commuter who experiences it every single day? So what would be the answer of our participants online? Can you give me a heart sign if it's the planner who designed it? Or is it a commuter? No, a like, if it's a like. So here you can see the typical. Every morning you experience traffic, right? We do experience during peak hour the traffic. We see, I think the good news is we already have cycling lanes, no? So you have an option to cycle. But unfortunately, there are some areas wherein you can see at the top, no, it's a battle to even walk to the next public transport system. And then, of course, you have your last mile connectivity like the tricycles. So there. So, but who are the commuters? I think it's very important, no? So the commuter are your everyday people, the different stories, and again, the common need to get to where life takes them, no? So here we see the students. The students, I think many of our participants here are also students of DAP, heading to school, building the future. I hope you'll be part of their future. We have the health workers who are trying to heal and serve. We have got the workers building our cities or actually powering our economy. Of course, we also have vendors, no? They try to sustain livelihoods, supporting our families. We have seniors. I think it's very important, no, that our seniors also stay active and well-connected. And of course, the parents and caregivers making countless trips for their loved ones. So I think all of you, I hope, can actually relate to this slide, no? So you are actually the heart of our transportation system. Your safety, your comfort, your voices actually matter in building mobility for all, no? So I think, so I'm just setting the stage, no, for us to understand, no, But what if the commuters become co-planners instead of just end users? Can many of you imagine this? I hope you do, because this is the purpose of this lecture, right? So for context, I think it's very important that I highlight that. To be fair, Asia added 1 billion vehicles in 20 years. So congestion and widening transport inequality is not common to the Philippines, no? That's also an issue in Asia. Mode diversification actually increased choices, but it depends inequities, especially where mass transit coverage is limited. When we say mode diversification, we can see all kinds of public transport, right? Whether they're formal or informal. In most developed countries, that's not common anymore. Unfortunately, in most developed countries, like our case, no, in Metro Manila, you will see all sorts, no? And in Metro Manila, we also have the highest travel time in Southeast Asia. We have 27 minutes, 20 seconds per 10 kilometer, no, according to TomTom. That's 105 hours lost per year in traffic and 143 hours. So it increased in 2025. We've got 13 million people with 5,000 kilometer roads, and the reality is that most households do not own private vehicles. But we all know our policies actually favor them. So public transport, rail, buses, jeepneys, tricycles, motorcycle taxis, TNVS, no, they're largely privately operated, and as we know, a little bit kind of fragmented. So what's the urban mobility reality that we're facing? Low readiness, with actually 60 of the 65 global citizens, 35% of residents in informal settlements. So there's this persistent access gap. Despite cleaner vehicles and active transport investment, informal modes, especially motorcycle taxis, actually fill the last mile gaps where congestion undermines our formal system. So what's the basic transportation statistics that I hope would be more aware of? Well, in the Philippines, we're 119 million. 49% of these are in urban areas, 51% rural areas. And the reality, 8 out of 10 people in Metro Manila take public transport. It's also a reality, according to statistics, that 1 in every 10 Filipinos has some level of disability. Every 15 minutes, someone dies in a road crash in the Philippines, and that's according to the World Health Organization 2023 report. Our road traffic deaths increased by 39% from 7,900 to 11,996 deaths. Road traffic injuries are still the leading cause of death. Road traffic injuries cost 2.6% of our country's GDP. And motor vehicles are still the major source of particulate pollution in Metro Manila. And the reality also with regards to climate change, transportation is the largest source of air pollution and energy-related greenhouse gas emission at 34%. So we're talking about real statistics here that actually impact our daily lives. So what's the importance of transportation? I think it's very important that we try to understand transportation systems first, no? Before going on to mass public transport. Right now, if we talk about transportation system, we talk about the different components, and I hope all of us could relate, no? We're all familiar with the modes of transport, right? Some of you walk, so you're really our champion for active transport. Some of you cycle, no? You have that option already. Others use pedicabs or non-motorized transport. Of course, there's also electric vehicles, no? So those are we have some innovation on that already. We have different kind of public transport. I always share that when I was in Japan as a graduate student, I actually miss our public transport, meaning I miss the tricycles, I miss my last connectivity, because in other countries where I live, like in Japan, I have no other option but to cycle or to walk. Yeah, and the transport can be very expensive. I have no other option, really, if my place is not near a public transit hub, no? So mass transit, bus, rail. But it's also only in Japan where I experienced that even the bus, they run on real and reliable time, and even if I'm alone, they will move, no? So private vehicles, of course, and of course the goods. Let's not forget our logistics about our trucks, no? And all of this has a related infrastructure. You have the physical, no? The roads, the terminal. If we're now introducing electric vehicle, the importance of charging station, we need to understand our energy source. Of course, the digitalization is also another aspect that we should also look into. When we talk about infrastructure, it's connected to our comprehensive master plan, right? Because we need to understand where to put all this physical infrastructure. But more than that, I think it's also important to understand the systems of operation, meaning what are the policies? To have enough policy, I think we're familiar with all the rules and regulations, but how about the incentives? Do we have enough incentives that would make our public transport, our mass transit, really utilize or really improve, no? We need to understand ownership. I always say that transportation system is actually investment heavy. No, it's expensive. That's the reality. It's not that easy because it's not something that you can just buy anywhere. You really have to plan, no? And then there's operations, there's the management. We can have all the public transport, but if it's not managed well, no, we see where we see some inefficiency on that. So I think I want you to understand what the transportation system components are, and from this, understand where can we all play a role. Because the reality is, we need to understand where can we also help, no, on improving our systems. So we move to the next. The reality here in the Philippines, 120 vehicles per 1,000 population. The vehicle share, as you can see, now we have 50% two-wheeler, no? Two-wheeler, then the bus is just at 19%. No, we have the the vehicles, no, and then the trucks as only 4%. So this is from the data of Asian Transport Observatory as of 2024, and this is for the Philippines. Now we go to the important aspect of this talk. What are our objectives? No, we want to identify ways in which citizen feedback can help build better transport outcomes. How can we actually help? Can we play a role? No, I think that's the question all of us are asking, right? Can we recognize and I hope that everyone also recognize, no, the institutional barriers that hinder citizen participation in transport policy decision making, and also explore the possible ways in which decision makers can intentionally integrate citizen feedback into local or national transport governance processes. So these are the objectives that I hope, no, I could give input on this talk. So now we go to the next part. Why do citizen feedback matters in mass transit? Why do you matter? I think that's a question. No, what's the limit of technical planning? I see that we have some planners, no, some of the students here. For a summary, transport planning traditionally relies on travel demand models, and if we have travel demand models, it means that we need to have the data. We need to have data, meaning we need to have like trip diary that would be a basis for your travel demand models. Of course, there's engineering standards. That's why we need all the engineers. The GIS, no, because we talk about network, we just don't talk about one route. We talk about all the things that connect our mobility. Then we talk about the passenger. I think this is also important. And then we try to simulate. So those things in planning is very essential, but they are somehow incomplete. Why? Because they often fail to capture the fear of unsafe waiting shed, if we have waiting sheds, no? Because that's also another issue. Not all places have really defined waiting sheds, right? Or the inconvenience of transfer. Last one is, I think it was the other 2 days ago, I was with our interns, and we did the ferry ride, no? So transfer from MRT to the ferry, and my team was like asking, so where is the transfer? So I have to guide them, and we have to cross, I think, the street in Guadalupe. So it's a little bit challenging. And we see all this, the little parks now, it's not a park, no, and all the issue about the walkability of the area. So we have accessibility challenges, and I remember one of our team is asking, so what happened with the people with disability, right? The elderly, if they don't know, well, if the access is not that convenient. And then there's comfort, and then there's dignity, the reality of gendered experiences. All of us had different ways, no? And the lived experiences of our vulnerable groups. Because at the end of it, good transport is not only efficient, it is experience, no? And if we fail to answer that, I think that's where we also have all these issues. Next is lived experience as a transport data. Earlier, I mentioned to you, right, that we need data. So here, I took a photo, no? From the citizen, I think we need to get feedback, pain points, unmet needs, hidden bottlenecks, local knowledge, and emerging mobility trends. And I give some examples about unsafe pedestrian crossing, which was a challenge that we experienced when we crossed the road to Guadalupe Station. The flooding, as we all know, because it's rainy season. Some of the poorly located bus stop, inconsistent schedules, and the last mile problem. Now I have a question to our dear viewers. How many of you have actually complained or actually wrote to an office sharing all your experiences? Is there anyone? Can I see a thumbs up? How many of you have actually written maybe DOTR, the local government units, if you have like issues on your public transport? So, well, I'm seeing some. So, how many experienced all the things that I set as an example? Can I see some, not a thumbs up, but a thumbs down sign? How many have experienced the things that we've been discussing? Are there anyone who experienced this issue? Like all the issues about the commute? Oh, there's few. That's a good news, right? So I think, no? So now I'm seeing more. So this is the reality. But you have experienced it. Have we done something? Have we shared these issues? Then you might wonder, but how? Where? I think those were the questions, right? Right? So here, yeah, I saw this photo I take at the right, no, iskinita, biglang pogi, sometimes you will see how Filipinos are also very humorous, right? They can see things. No, you don't give us a direction, I will give you a direction. For our foreign guests, iskinita, biglang pogi means there's a way, and you will become handsome, right? So for those, if you have an international guest, no, so that's a sign, and that's actually done, I don't think by the government, right? It's meaning someone did this to make sure to show that, hey, there's a road, no? So in the reality, you all work, you as a people, we as a people, no, we act as sensors, no? I think that's a very important thing, no? We can share something and it can actually improve the system. But what is the Philippine Feedback Hub? What is the current situation? No, the Philippine transportation planning process, based on the studies that I've done, no, so far, we actually have a very top-down planning to people-centered. Well, the goal is to do a people-centered co-planning, right? Right now, we all know the national agencies involved in our transportation system. We talk about the OTR, and we're fortunate to have that. We have her, a representative. We talk about the branches of the OTR, like the agencies under the OTR, like LTFRB, the Land Transportation Franchise Regulatory Board, no, for our mass public transport, the Land Transport Agencies, MMDA, DPWH, NEDA, DBM, and all the other agencies. We all know that they do set the national policies and regulations. They do approve major projects and funding, and they do conduct studies and standards. Maybe my other question to our participants online, how many of you have actually responded to a transport survey? By any chance, is there anyone? Can I see like thumbs up? If by any chance you were able, you're one of the lucky who got interviewed. So few, right? So this is something, no? And I always want to highlight the importance of survey, no? Before, I think some people do not like responding to survey. I'm also like that one. But since I studied in Japan and our topic is transportation, that's the first thing I learned, the importance of data. The thing is, in other countries, and this is not just Japan, I know Korea, Singapore, and other countries, trip diary is already part of their survey. So it's like part of the census. It's very important because when we talk about trip diary or trip data, you try to understand the mobility of the people, their movement from one place to another. And I believe this is also the reason why all developed countries had really good public transport, because it's based from the data. Unfortunately, now I think other countries are also having problems because, of course, those in the far-flung areas, no, they used to have a good train system. Unfortunately, less people, no, they're moving to the city. So those things are also being studied, no. So I think in one, I remember part of our class, I still remember when we had the data and we found out that, yeah, people are relocating, and I think the cats saved one of the train station. So tourism became part, and it helped, move the system. So, but going back to our topic about Philippine feedback gap, so we have the national. And it was only very recent, no, that the Department of the Transportation actually had a policy for the local government to come up with their local public transport route plan. And I think this helped because now the LGUs are more in tune to what the communities need, no? So they now implement. Well, we all know that they do implement traffic and transport programs, and I think we are experiencing, I think some LGUs are quite lucky that they're having free services, no? Free bus transport service. I think UC has one, if Davao already. And I think some LGUs are now looking at that, no? We all know that the LGUs are the one managing the roads, no? Not the terminal, no? But I think as part of their master plan, it should be. And of course, the local transport operators. Then we have the commuters. At the center of it, we just experience them, correct? So I think it's very important to see where is this continuous citizen participation. No, I think that's what I want to highlight in this transport planning process. Right now, if I ask you, have you have a means to actually give feedback? So if the answer is no, then that's where we have to work on. Now I move on to the gaps, no? So the structural, I think it's important to understand the institutional barriers, no? The structural, we have centralized decision making, fragmented transport agencies with overlapping mandates sometimes. Of course, administrative, we have limited consultation time. We have lack of dedicated participation mechanisms, and consultation often become as a compliance. Social part, I think we also have to understand there's consultation fatigue. There's also digital divide, no? There's the underrepresentation of the vulnerable groups, no? The government distrust. Then there's political, changing priorities, electoral cycles, politicization of projects, no? This is the sad reality that we're facing. So, whose voice are really heard? Whose voice remain invisible? So I think this is the question for everyone, no? But how do we move forward? I think that's a more important part. How do we move from consultation to co-planning? We all know that there's an evolution of participation. To be fair with the government, they always inform the citizen, right? Next is they do consult. They ask opinion, correct? But involve. How involved are we as a citizen to identify this issue? Do we collaborate? So government and citizens design solutions together. How about co-create and co-govern? How do citizens become long-term partners? So ask yourself, have I done any of this? We talk about participatory governance. We talk about collaborative planning, citizen participation, citizen-centered mobility, human-centered design. But I think the goal is not simply listening. It's very important that the goal is using this citizen feedback meaningfully. Are we utilizing them? No, I think that's one of the major concerns. So how can we learn? No, to be fair, there are really successful participatory transport projects. So I know for one, the Korea, no, the bus system reforms, they have this extensive engagement, participatory decision making. I think it's very important I highlight this, the Bus Reform Civic Committee, no, to work with bus operators, drivers, union, and stakeholders. So they have a committee where they have members from civil organizations, bus companies, experts, city council, and other related entities, no? So they serve as independent inter-organizational body to discuss and negotiate the reform. So I shared the source here. So the lesson, there's a continuous passenger feedback. There's big data and citizen reporting. So, as I mentioned earlier, aside from the survey that they have, the regular trip diary, trip information data that they get, they do have public engagement. Next, another good example, and I think many of you have heard, is Bogota, Colombia. I think they're quite famous already for this one, that the mayor even ran for as a president. No? So it's a city with 10 million people with extensive busways. No? They don't have any other mode, but mostly busways. No? So the challenge for them is their rapid population growth and the severe traffic congestion. So just like us, they have transport that's so fragmented, no? And that the residents actually demanded safer, faster, and more affordable mobility. So what they did is actually to a real participatory approach, more public consultations, neighborhood dialogue. Quick question to everyone. Have many of you participated in any neighborhood dialogues with regards to transport services? So if you don't have that, I think this is something I hope you can get as a takeaway from this. Citizen feedback, again, the role of passenger complaints, surveys and service evaluations, stakeholder engagement, and of course, the continuous monitoring. And here you can see there's a Trans-Milenio agency who's always in touch on how to improve their service. So this is also available online. The lesson, community consultation, public information campaign. No? So they demonstrated that transit planning works best when users are treated as partners and not just as passengers. I think for me that's an important concept. No? Better transit emerges when commuters become co-planners. So Bogota experience showed this, and this has been documented many times already. What else? Singapore. Yeah, this is closest to us. Yes? No? Singapore developed an integrated MRT, bus, walking, and cycling network. No? Their goal is also not only efficient operation, but reliable, inclusive, and user-centered mobility. How they did that? They had public consultations. No? Land Transport Authority actually gathers views on major transport plans. New rail lines, no? They even have a service app for that. No, they do conduct regular surveys, and they have community partnerships, no, with residents, businesses, schools, and advocacy groups that help refine their local transport solution. So they're also very much involved. No? So here you can see how, like land transport master plan consultations. I hope many of you have been involved in your transport master plan, and I hope we have one. No, of course they do MRT and bus service. I am quite sure here in the Philippines, our LRT too, if I'm not mistaken, always ask for service feedback. Accessibility improvement. So the result is actually high public transport user, continuous improvement, and responsiveness to a neighborhood level mobility. And I think they also have this trust on transparent communication and regular engagement. So for Singapore, I think they show that participation works best when feedback is easy to submit. It's routinely collected, there's a regularization. It's publicly acknowledged and actually connected to actual service improvement. So for anyone who's been to Singapore, I think we can all relate to that, right? It's really a world-class transport system, not just built on infrastructure, but also on continuously listening, data-driven decision, and meaningful commuter engagement. So I got that also from one of the references. So we also have Transport for London, how participation happens, how they did their public consultations. They also, I think here, the key is open data and transparency through published performance data. So if you go online, you can see all this information. What can we learn from the commuters? So safety concerns at stations, their crowding, reliability, the accessibility barriers, and the passenger comfort. So the Transport for London model shows that smart mobility is strongest when technology and data are complemented by commuter experience, local knowledge, and continuous public dialogue. Now we go to the Philippines. It's not all bad in our country, So here I want to highlight what happened in Mount Kamuning pedestrian. I have to give this an example. Why? Because this is connected to our MRT station. Correct? So there was a time, it became a butt of joke. It's called Mount Kamuning hiking, right? But, I think the social media pressure plus the first family actually experiencing made it happen that it can be improved. So I think within a year, it was possible. You see the new one. So I hope we continue to have a real kind of overpass, although I'm not a big fan of overpasses, but as long as it would help improve the system, I think it's good. Then, of course, we all hear about, I'm highlighting the importance of active transport. Why? Because we cannot talk about mass transit without connecting it to the walkability of the area, to the options available, to the connection. So here, and I'm happy to share that at least the Department of Transportation also have a active transport strategic master plan, and they really ask feedback from the community, right? So here is one, we just want to share the insights from the field, Iloilo now is already a model, especially for cycling. So we have these really good experiences also, And I want to highlight also the Spark project in Maginhawa, I know it's a tactical urbanism concept, They have some issues in that area in Maginhawa, but what happened? The LGU looked for another area. It's a Sunday car-free weekend, which is also connected to their free buses. So I think it's very important that we understand all this development, So it's possible, I think, yeah. And then, of course, we also have Pasig City. Pasig City, if I'm not mistaken, is also working hard on their transport master plan. We've been doing some they had consultations, and they even partner with Sirmo. So it's a tech app. So they're working. So this you can see, how they integrate technology. Of course, we have Davao City. I got this from the news, Bus sectors join in Davao bus workshop on bus stop shelter design. I think this is an important concept. We have to involve the community. And as you can see now, Davao is getting known, for the brand of their buses. So, then I think what I want to highlight is policy options. How do we really make participation institutional? So here you can see the better feedback collection, what a better decision process require is that you have a citizen advisory committee. You have participatory transport planning, you have stakeholder mapping, you have public deliberation, and transparent reporting. So it's not just we receive your feedback, it's actually this is how your feedback changed the project. So I think this is what we want to highlight. Then, what is better governance, right? We want better governance. So we need to institutionalize participation. And I think this is done with the LGU doing mobility councils. Of course, the role of the public to please, if there's some survey, please respond to surveys. Citizen representatives, university government partnership, which I think we're doing as also from the University of the Philippines, and some civil society engagement. Nowadays, we have a number of civil society. We have Move as One, Alt Mobility, and a number of them actually. So what do we want? I think we want a smart city, but more than smart, I think what we want is a caring citizen, no? Because you can have AI, yeah, but AI is dependent on data. If you don't have data, it's very hard for AI to come up with really good plan, no? Of course, digital twinning, smart mobility, yeah, technology can power the system, but it's us people who can give it purpose, no? Best mobility solutions happen when technology listens, people lead, and smart systems, stronger communities, then we have a better future together. What we need is to encourage pro-people infrastructure investment. Hopefully, we won't see many of our Mount Kamuning experience. We encourage investment in sustainable transport infrastructure and services. We lead in activities that changes mindset and behavior of transport users, private sector, and decision makers. We need to be involved in data gathering for sound decision making. We also need to lead in knowledge sharing initiatives, collaborate with different disciplines, sectors, and ensure that it's a people-oriented development. Because at the end of the day, I think the best transport system is not the one that moves the most people the fastest. It is the one that is designed with the people it serves. No, your voices count. No, big impact. No, for but better journeys for all. As an end, I'd like to share with you the typical. I will go back to one. No, now this is really one because I only have my all-male students, no, interns. So they did this really nice, I hope a nice video. But how do I open? Wait. Yeah, there. And with that, I end my presentation, and I hope I made you also reflect on your role in making our our mass transit better. So thank you, everyone. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Dr. Guillen, for that very insightful and comprehensive presentation. I can't agree more. Your presentation, supported by the facts and figures, really captured the essence of our topic today. You've underscored the important principle of good governance, that policies are often strongest when they are informed by the people they are intended to serve, especially so in the case of public transportation, a service used by millions every day. What a way to start our lecture. Once again, let us give our first speaker another round of applause. Our first session established an important premise. Meaningful citizen participation is not merely an ideal of good governance. It is an essential component of responsive and people-centered transport planning. The question now is, how can decision makers genuinely integrate citizen feedback to build a public transport system that is responsive, centered on the realities of Filipino commuters? Let us unpack this question further in our next session. But before that, let us have a 5-minute health break. Our first session reminded us that building better transport systems is a complex and long-term mission. And in this journey of developing solutions, one aspect that has yet to be addressed is bridging the feedback gap in transport governance. That is precisely where our next discussion takes us. Our next stop this afternoon features a distinguished set of panelists who will offer perspectives from international organizations, the national government, the local government, the civil society on how transport governance can become more responsive to the needs of Filipino commuters. With that, let us begin by looking at the issue from the perspective of international development and global practice. Allow me the honor of introducing our first panelist this afternoon. Our first panelist has over 25 years of professional experience, including 10 years with the Asian Development Bank. He joined ADB in 2015 and has since been involved in transport sector development projects across Asia. His experience covers Southeast Asian countries, including Lao People's Democratic Republic, Myanmar, the Philippines, and Vietnam, as well as South Asian countries such as Bangladesh and India. He has worked extensively in road, rail, and urban transport with a particular focus on public transport system. Prior to joining ADB, he served with the government of Japan, where he was responsible for road sector policies and projects, including the development of financing modalities for expressways and the construction of urban expressways in Tokyo. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Shuji Kimura.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the generous introduction. So today, I'd like to discuss about, the stakeholder engagement for better transport outcomes. So honestly speaking, my presentation overlaps Dr. Lilian's presentation. So, actually I try to share my experience, especially when I was working for the Japanese government, when I was actually involved in the project. That is why I involved in this public consultation also. So let me start. Okay. Which one? Oh, sorry. Okay, so the first, why stakeholder engagement matters, right? So this is quite same as, Dr. Gideon's point, right? Basically, data and theory, this is planners is good at, versus lived experience. So as already, Dr. Gideon mentioned that the planner has some aggregated data, they see the people as a kind of number, it's aggregate, it's important, but again, some experience should be taken up also. So, as already explained that, as a one person, actually from my experience, sometimes, planner thinks, just allow is sufficient for the signage. But sometimes, some people get used to the public transport system, easily understand it. But, some less frequent users needs more information. These, minor gap exists. So that is why, this, the stakeholder engagement matters. And second point is understanding of the specific needs for PWD children and older persons, and also I'd say like female, especially pregnant women, those kind of special needs. Also nowadays it can be already kind of incorporated from the planning, but historically the voice of the people makes these things involved in the design. And third component is incorporating local knowledge and the context. Sometimes in my experience, some cities are much hotter than the other cities, and some shade is totally different from other cities, something like that. So these things are also picked up by the voice of the users. So And also, focusing on service delivery, not just infrastructure provision. This is also, experience thing, right? Dr. Gideon already mentioned that the comfort or dignity, those things are also matters for the users, which is a little bit difficult to incorporate by the transport planners because they are usually touching aggregated data. So then, okay, so we understand some voice of the people should be involved. Then when should stakeholder engage? So from the master planning and feasibility study, project design, project implementation, and operation should, throughout the project cycle. So during the master planning, if this is mostly, if you want a railway system or not, or preferably bus system, often, aggregate data matters more, but still, preference of the people also important. And the feasibility study, surely, if this road or, bus system to be built or not, okay, usually the priority matters for the users. And third on project design, this is, down to the more, touching point. As I mentioned, the signage and brightness of the space, these things. And project implementation, during the project implementation, this is a little bit more on kind of adverse impact, the noise, vibration. These things should be also the concern of the stakeholders. And during operation, as already mentioned, that if operation is not so good, then just pick up the voice of the users and just improve it. So this stakeholder engagement has to be done throughout the project cycle. So okay, could you go one slide forward? Oh, sorry. So what types of stakeholder engagement activity can be used, right? So there are many types of stakeholder engagement. The first, like interview or survey, and focus group discussions, specific together who has specific concerns, and consultation meeting, kind of general one, and workshop that is more participatory, and open houses. I'll explain later, but this is a little bit more, accessible, and also, public hearing. Those things are, usually taken for other engagement activities. So let me, share my experience of actual project. So this is an example of one expressway project in Tokyo. So which I was involved. That is why I chose this one to show some details. So public comments and hearing, which means we need to actually this is a legal requirement. We need to present to people what is the project, where it is, what construction is being planned, and public comments is usually get from through website. We need to open for the comment, through the website. And public hearing is, as you can see, that this kind of physical meeting. And also focus group discussion. It's not legally mandated, but we usually conduct such kind of focus group discussion for like elderly people, PWDs, and or other needs. In this case, only like PWDs. So third one is the technical committee meetings. This is a little bit more like half public, but people somehow specialized. Especially we are inviting people from academia. How do they think about it? This is kind of another type of meeting. And public consultation meeting means this is more generic, and just by occasions we had a public consultation meetings. For example, to start the land acquisition, when we start the construction work, when we start making noise, every time some like a trigger event happens, we usually conducted the public consultation meetings. And also community meetings is more on the project site related. Usually we join the community meetings to explain about the project, just update them, to ask their concerns. Often these community meetings concern is like noise, vibration, or trucks come into the community roads. Those kind of concerns shared. So we just promise what time we should avoid, like school commuting time should be avoided, these kind of things. And open house is usually, okay, in Tokyo, everybody's busy. So it's difficult to gather people 7 p.m. where, it's kind of difficult. That is why, we make a kind of house open for like 3 days, 4 days. So you can come whatever your time of your convenience. Then just the people explain, oh, this is a project and how this is occurs. So those are things are another type of the engagement to make more accessible communication. So other the example is the bus project in Niigata. It is more public transport system. So for this case, we got the public comments on the strategic urban transport plan. So, if where should bus run, how frequency should be. And second one is a consultation meeting on the bus project. The bus project is planned by the actually local government unit, but this plan is kind of introduced to the public. How do they think about it? And also in workshops for the bus terminal design and development, especially this infrastructure is relatively easy. We can show this mock-up, and people's opinion can be incorporated. And also they conducted pilot operation and user trials. Especially this time, they introduced articulated buses. Sometimes people are a little bit, worried about, if 18-meter bus is introduced, it might be too long. What happened to the corner? So they, conducted pilot operation also. And interestingly, they conducted public meeting held by the private sectors. Actually, CSO kind of gathered a meeting for this purpose. Because that project was kind of controversial. Originally, the proposal was BRT, which means dedicated bus lane to be secured. However, after this consultation meeting, public meetings, the conclusion was okay, give up the dedicated lanes. So finally, ultimately speaking, they just chose introduce new buses, articulated buses, and a little bit more frequent operations. But the city gave up the dedicated lanes. I'm not so sure which is good or not, but anyways, the public consultation make changes in the design of the project. I forgot that about that expressway in Tokyo. Even in the case, that project is a little bit special because huge protest occurs for the project. But through this consultation meeting, actually design of the road changed a lot. Actually, it was planned to a continuous viaduct, overhead road, but it's changed to the underground. It's gonna make a huge changes. So these consultation actually matters. So and as I mentioned, that some consultation is legal requirement. So there is a venue to raise a voice from the people already. So. And for from now ADB point of view, so now ADB approved the environment and social framework. That is in 2024, quite recently. So now this new framework requires the 10 environmental and social safeguards standards. Then among others, this ESS 10 is stakeholder engagement and information disclosure. So which means, for ADB financing project, the stakeholder engagement is mandatory requirement, not just recommendation or suggestion from ADB. So for any kind of ADB finance project from now on, actually, government side, you are required to conduct such kind of meaning consultation following this guideline. So that is the kind of trend of this ADB financing. Also, World Bank is, a little bit ahead of us, and they have already such kind of requirement already. So actually, I'd like to share some, example in the Philippines. So this is project I'm involved, under ADB financing. Dr. Gillian also mentioned a little bit about this project. Basically, this project had a strong consultation with the public. Basically, under the project preparation stage, the consultation was held. A lot of consultation was held, as I mentioned here. So, but this is mostly like the consultation with we call it project affected people, like jeepney drivers who will be affected by the introduction of the buses. So these consultations are the kind of majority, but the city and DOTR conducted a lot of consultations with the affected people. Then now, we are in the project implementation phase. Then we call it social preparation activity for the, again, the project affected people. So then they conducted, small batches, consultation meetings with those people from 2024. And also, aside from the consultation with the affected people, they also conducted a human-centered design workshop in the design of the depot in 2025. So this is related to Dr. Gideon already explained. So actually they gather people and see the bus depot, existing ones. It is not for urban transport rather than a little bit long distance depots, but they see it and to put some request to the coming terminal depots. So this kind of inclusive design workshop is conducted. So that is something now emerging in this Philippines too. So, but however, sometimes comment request from these people are a little bit too gorgeous. I would say sometimes they want to have the fountain or statue or something like that, right? So it's okay, raise the voice is fine, but sometimes it's difficult to incorporate these ideas. But I think this is also learning process. People get used to it. Okay, these opinion is relatively being picked up, but those other opinions may not be picked up by the government side. Maybe people will learn what kind of comments should be provided during this consultation. But anyways, any type of comment is okay. Anyways, the government side will screen. So it is great, if this tendency is widened to the other project too. And also, honestly speaking, historically, stakeholder engagement has, primarily been used to mitigate adverse project impact. If the noise is too much, the community will be divided. So to mitigate these impact, the voice was taken. But nowadays, stakeholder engagement is now, more powerful tool for improving the project, the outcomes, and also, quality of this project. So my suggestion is basically stakeholder engagement should be institutionalized throughout the project cycle, so that the voice of the people can be incorporated in this transport project. Okay, so that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimura, for sharing those valuable international perspectives. You've reminded us that many of the transportation challenges we face are not unique to the Philippines. Thank you for sharing insights on how public engagement is done in foreign jurisdictions as compared to the Philippines. But more importantly, whatever the context may be, transport systems are truly most responsive when they are informed by the people who use them. From an international perspective, we move back home. To provide us with the Philippine government's perspective, it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is a public servant, environmental planner, and civic volunteer with 15 years of experience in public policy, government planning, project management, and stakeholder engagement. She is Director 4 at the Transport Policy and Planning Service of the Department of Transportation. She previously served as Department Manager at the Tourism Promotions Board and Chief Planning Officer at the Basis Conversion and Development Authority. She also worked at the University of the Philippines National College of Public Administration and Governance as Project Manager and Governance Researcher, managing the implementation of policy evaluation, planning, and capacity building initiatives. She holds a bachelor's degree in public administration, a diploma in urban and regional planning from the University of the Philippines, and a master of science in urban management and development, specializing in strategic urban planning and policies from Erasmus University Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Beyond her profession, she serves as Philippine Marine Corps reservist and supports civil, military, and community development initiatives. Let us welcome to the floor Director Neza Mendoza.
Hapon po sa ating lahat. So, first of all, on behalf of the Department of Transportation, we would like to express our gratitude to the Development Academy of the Philippines for organizing this forum. No? This forum serves as an opportunity for us to meet experts, advocates, partners, and of course our stakeholders po to help us improve the country's transportation system. And second po, allow me to apologize as we recognize po that many Filipinos still face challenges in our daily commute. While we do not claim naman po that we can resolve these things right now, we are committed naman po that we are ready to listen, we are ready to learn po, and continuously improve our policies, plans, and programs po through a meaningful stakeholder engagement. So when we hear the word transportation po, no, so earlier dun po sa video sinabi po na naisip natin roads, railways, airports, and terminals. So while these are essential components of the transport system, transportation is more than infrastructure. No? It is about enabling a safe, efficient, reliable, and sustainable movement of people and goods. At the heart of this effort is a simple principle. Transportation exists po to improve people's lives. And that is why people must always be at the center of transportation planning. This brings me to the central question of today's discussion. So, how do we genuinely integrate citizen feedback? So, at the DOTR po, our approach is guided by these three principles. Una po, institutionalize stakeholder engagement. Second, create multiple channels for people to be heard. And third, ensuring po that the feedback informs better policies and decisions po. And recognizing po yung complexity po ng transport sector, no? The department po has now an integrated transport policy and planning units, no, to enable a more coordinated, evidence-based, and people-centered decision-making. And right now din po, we are actively coordinating with other national government agencies that to ensure po na ang ating transport policies and master plans po are aligned with the land use, logistics, tourism, economic development, environmental sustainability, and inclusive mobility. It's also important to note po that stakeholder engagement po is being embedded po talaga sa aming policy and planning. No? Right now po, we have three main cross-cutting priorities, and these are gender and development, climate resilience, environmental sustainability, and inclusive mobility to ensure po that transport policies and projects are responsive to the diverse needs of the people. And of course po, importante nga po na we institutionalize these initiatives, and it begins with the leadership. So, under the leadership of Secretary Banoy Lopez po, the department has consistently emphasized the importance of listening to our clients and stakeholders. So, as part of his commitment po, officials are required to commute regularly to gain po first-hand insights into the daily experiences of the Filipino commuter. So, I'm also fortunate po that under the leadership of the USEC and ASEC of Planning po, they always remind us that when we present policies, plans, and other initiatives po sa office, dapat po ito ay evidence-based at dapat po subukan po talaga namin na ma-resolve po yung mga araw-araw na na-experience po natin when we commute po. And of course, I think more importantly po, no, I want to recognize because I have a privilege to work with the admin and technical staff of DOTR po, no. We have genuine advocates of inclusive mobility, active transport, and good governance po. And hindi na po kailangang sabihin sa kanila yung mga ganitong bagay. Kusa po talaga silang nagpropose po ng projects and initiatives po to resolve our issues with the transport system. And to ensure po that these efforts are sustained and consistently implemented, so ito po, they must be embedded in our policies and institutional framework. So that is why we are integrating accessibility, gender and development, and broader social inclusion into transport planning through policies such as the Accessible Travel Policy and the DOTR co-design framework po. So this embeds stakeholder engagement in our DNA in how we formulate our policies, plans, and program. This year din po, no, we will be institutionalizing GEDSI audits across our transit hubs in coordination po with the National Council for Disability Affairs. And then, of course po, we also create multiple channels for people to be heard, no? Through our Communications and Commuters Affairs Office, we gather po ang inyong feedback through the FOI portal, the commuter hotline, social media platforms po, and yung aming pong mga public assistance desk po. Sa airport, sa MRT po, and then sa mga stations po, no? So, the feedback po is referred to the appropriate offices for action and analyze to identify recurring issues that inform policy and service improvement. And at the DOTR po, we also conduct, so earlier, Sir explained about the project cycle. So, embedded po ang stakeholder engagements sa buong cycle po ng aming operation sa DOTR. So, we conduct transport surveys, field visits, stakeholder dialogues po, technical discussions to better understand po yung ating mga issues on the ground. So, since last year po, we have expanded our engagement with the active transport advocates and stakeholder groups po sa mga cities and municipalities po all throughout the Philippines. So, may mga pilot areas pa lang po kami. But moving forward po, ito pong ATSMP ang magiging guide po ng ating mga transport projects po. So, we have also strengthened our community dialogues po in our right-of-way program to facilitate po yung land acquisition and ensuring po that fair and transparent po yung engagement with affected communities and support po ang timely implementation of transport infrastructure projects. Lastly po, stakeholder engagement is meaningful only when it leads to better policies and implementation. So, we strive po talaga to ensure that the feedback we receive is translated into our policies, plans, and projects po. For example po, na-mention din po kanina, inputs from commuters and stakeholder po help inform improvements to the Kamuning busway. And then, similarly po, last year po, no, yung team po namin with our NDC unit po, in updating the transport sector's contribution to the NDC, they conducted a series of discussion with the academe, transport operators, commuters, and other transport stakeholders po. And then, ginamit po namin yung insights and recommendations dito in updating the nationally determined contributions po. And of course, just to add lang po, no, beyond yung formal engagement, ako po and my colleagues po sa DOTR, mahilig po kaming mag-doom scroll. Pero part po nun is that binabasa po namin yung feedback dun sa mga transport-related pages and groups po sa Facebook. So, continue lang po ang pagpo-post ninyo sa Facebook. And i-follow nyo na rin po ang DOTR. And tinitingnan po namin, pag-uusapan po namin yan sa office kung paano ba namin masusolusyonan yun sa level namin sa opisina. So, at the DOTR po, we view stakeholder engagement as a continuous cycle of listening, learning, and improving. So we listen by engaging our stakeholders early and throughout the policy and project cycle. We learn by combining technical evidence with the experiences of commuters and stakeholders, and we continuously improve po to refine our policies, programs, and services. So, we know po that there's still so much work to do, and building a better transport system will take all of us working together po. So, building a people-centered transport system requires continuous partnership po with commuters, transport operators, local government units, the academe, civil society organization, our development partners, and all of our stakeholders. So, at the DOTR, we remain committed po to listening, learning, and improving, because the best transport policies are not only technically sound, but are also shaped by the people we serve. Muli po, on behalf of the Department of Transportation, maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Director Mendoza, for sharing the department's perspective, and also for sharing the DOTR's ongoing effort to address transportation issues and concerns. Kaya natin to pag sama-sama tayo, sama-sama nating harapin yung problema sa transportation. Your insights highlight an important point. Responsive transport systems are built not only through sound policies, but also through institutions that are willing to learn, adapt, and respond to the evolving needs of the commuters. In that way, national policies effectively serve as an overall direction for transport development. But of course, many mobility challenges are experienced and often addressed at the local level, where planning and implementation intersect most directly with the daily realities of commuters. To provide us with a local government perspective, it is my pleasure to introduce our next panelist. A graduate of Consular and Diplomatic Affairs from De La Salle College of St. Benilde, Ms. Aliana May Bernadette is currently pursuing a master's in public administration. With more than 6 years of service in the Quezon City government, she has contributed to advancing sustainable urban mobility through policy development and transport planning. During her tenure at the Office of the City Administrator, she helped lead urban revitalization initiatives, including transport and pedestrian improvement projects. She currently serves as the Supervising Officer of the Transport Management Division, where she oversees the implementation of the Q City Bus Program and a Quezon City Local Public Transport Route Plan. She has been instrumental in expanding the city's free public bus system and leading its transition to electric buses, including the deployment of the electric fleet and supporting charging infrastructure. Her work focuses on building accessible, efficient, sustainable public transport systems that enhance mobility and quality of life. Ms. Aliana May Bernadette, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you po, Attorney. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to share Quezon City's experience in participatory urban transport planning. And today I will share with you how Quezon City has tried to close the mobility feedback loop by making citizens active participants, not only during planning, as discussed already by Prof. Sheila, Sir Kimura, and Ma'am Mendoza, but throughout implementation and continuous improvement. Next slide, please. All right. To provide context, Quezon City is the largest city in Metro Manila by land area. It's 161 square kilometers, and it's also the most populous city in the whole Philippines, with over 3 million residents. It occupies nearly 1/4 of the National Capital Region and serves as a major center for commerce, education, healthcare, and government services. Every day, people travel into out of and within Quezon City using a complex network of 360 inter- and intra-city routes. Planning mobility in this city at this scale, at this city, a city this big, is very hard. It's very complicated, but it also means that it affects millions of people every day. Transport decisions we make at a local government level affects millions of people. It also means that no singular solution or perspective is enough. We have learned that building a responsive transport system requires continuous engagement with people who use it every day. One lesson we have learned is that transport planning often ends after one consultation, before the project started, or before the project starts. That's usually how it is, not just in transportation, but across government projects. Many plans begin with stakeholder engagement, but once implementation starts, feedback mechanisms become less structured. The questions we continually ask ourselves is, how do we keep listening after implementation? How do we ensure that commuters, cyclists, pedestrians, transport operators, barangays, and civil society organizations continue to influence decisions as travel patterns evolve? That question has guided much of our work over the past years. Our approach in Quezon City follows a continuous cycle. This is also discussed by the previous speakers, but to give you a deep dive on how Quezon City thinks, First, we listen, we plan, we implement, monitor, and improve. This reflects one of Mayor Joy Belmonte's 14-point executive agenda. Number 14 of which is to listen to our citizens and know what they need. The important point is that participation is not a single consultation. It becomes part of governance, part of the process. Every improvement creates another opportunity to gather feedback and make better decisions, and to continuously improve the project, the service, the program. And for transport, this is very important because transportation will never be perfect. It will continuously evolve, and we have to continuously listen. Before proposing any transport projects, we first undertake various forms of data collection. I think this is a standard naman. We need to make data-driven decisions, including travel demand surveys, passenger surveys, etc. However, data alone does not provide the complete picture. To understand the realities on ground, we also engage a whole range of stakeholders, including barangays, transport operators, national government agencies, civil society organization, and multi-sectoral consultations. This process allows us to validate technical findings against the lived experiences of the community we serve. In many cases, the data confirms what people had already been telling us. In others, it uncovers travel patterns and mobility issues that were not immediately apparent through consultations. By combining technical evidence and stakeholder engagement, we are able to make transportation decisions that are more responsive, inclusive, and grounded in the actual needs of commuters. Let me share with you 3 initiatives, I'll limit it to 3. 3 initiatives of Quezon City when it comes to mobility. First is the Quezon City Bus Program. It is a free city bus service, so for all Quezon City residents, and actually for everyone, not just Quezon City residents. We have free bus service. It has 8 routes, 151 stops, and it's institutionalized through city ordinance. So, sabi nga nila, may forever sa Quezon City Bus. And we're slowly transitioning to electric buses. We have 16 electric buses in our fleet right now, a total of 89 buses, 16 of which are electric. And Q City Bus was introduced during the pandemic. So if you ask me, how was the public participatory urban planning in the QCity bus? Let me be honest, there was one. It was not perfect, I know. It was during the pandemic, but there was one. And why was this impactful? This is also where our bike lanes was discussed. The mayor, myself, and a few other government officials met with the Healthcare Alliance of doctors and nurses during that time. I forgot the exact name of the coalition, no? But they are healthcare workers asking for better transportation during the height of the pandemic, during the transportation crisis, where when they can't really take any public transportation during that time. It was a Zoom meeting. They asked, Mayor, we cannot go to work. We don't have transportation. They suggested we build bike lanes along East Avenue, the hospital area, BOPIS kung tawagin, because there's lung center, heart center, kidney. And then from that idea, requested by the healthcare workers back then, we studied, we developed their proposal. We thought of how do we expand the bike lanes, bringing them not just within the hospital area, but from their residence to work. How do we accommodate people who can't bike? Then we should launch a bus system that's a higher capacity. Even if we take 50% only of the capacity of the bus, they can still move a lot of people. So that's when the city bus and the bike lanes actually started. It's not a big consultation, to be honest. I hate to to discuss it with you, but yeah, that's the reality of it. But what do we do after? No? So as I mentioned during the previous slide, it's not just a one-time consultation. The important thing is after you implement the project, you continuously monitor. So that's what we did for the QC bus, the bike lanes, and the pedestrian initiatives of the city. One of the most important lessons we've learned is that participation cannot solely rely on consultations during the project planning, as discussed earlier. In Quezon City, we do it in 3 ways. Number 1 is institutional participation. We work closely with the People's Council of Quezon City, over 5,000 CSO network, and of which we provide organized avenues for community organizations to participate in local governance and policy discussions. I think all of the local governments units are required to have this. Another just institutionalized program of the city is the Open Government Partnership. We allow our citizens, and not just only citizens, but the public, to view our data. We have a dashboard where they can see the data that we have. How many scholars do we have? How many buses do we run? How many missed trips the buses are missing, etc. No? Big data of the city government. Second is through structured dialogue. This is the one I hate most, to be honest. This is where the brutality of stakeholders consultation really happens, no? To share with you the successful ones, actually, every structured dialogue are actually successful because either you get their comments and input it in your work, or get your comments and know that the people doesn't really like it, so you stop the project. But for example, the Quezon City Monthly Bike Kapihan, this one I'm very proud that Quezon City hosts monthly bike group meetings, and this has matured from a couple of bike groups to now we even have bike groups from San Juan City, from Pasig City, from Marikina City. It's a big group now, and they're really active. They're very supportive about the active transportation plans of the city, and they also participate in the process of planning programs, projects, and activities for the active mobility of Quezon City. So just recently, we also conducted LPTRP stakeholders consultation. Again, this is mandated by the LPTRP manual, but we take it a step forward or a step higher. by consulting with various sectors, not just for the operators, but we also included PWD, senior citizens, women, solo parents, name it, it's there. And third, of course, we make it easy for citizens to reach us through accessible feedback channels, whether our newly launched QCI report. This is where you can report everything, basically, every government services, and that you are able to track your reports and know if a city government department already handled your report. Our official website, email, hotline, social media pages, or walk-in concerns. Commuters can share complaints, suggestions, commendations, if any, please. These inputs are reviewed alongside operational data and help us guide service improvements or improvements in general. So let me share with you a story, that I also shared with the team earlier. Just last month, I think, a high school student from Don Alejandro Roses sent us an email. That Route 6 of the Quezon City bus passes by that school. And he observed that our operational hours starts at 7 a.m. because we try to limit the operational hours so as not to affect the PUVs in the area. He sent an email requesting if the service hours of the Route 6 be adjusted to 6 a.m. because they have to get to work they have to get to school at 7 a.m. So it's not possible for them to ride the 7 a.m. bus to reach the school at 7 a.m. So just that one email, forced or not really forced, but started a whole lot of surveys, a whole lot of studies to see if we can accommodate adjusting the operational hours and still meeting the headways for that student. Even coordinating with field personnel if they have observed certain number of students using the buses early in the morning and if it's really needed. So at the end, recommendations are being drafted and submitted to the higher ups to make the decisions. So that's just from one single email. And it made a lot of changes, or it's making a lot of changes. It's making us think that, okay, maybe we should. And that's what's important, that citizens be able to share what they need to share or request what they need to request, complain if any, and government to listen. Okay, I'll wrap this up. Sorry. Excuse me, next slide po. Next slide, please. Okay, so similarly, our pedestrianization projects were initiated through the requests from barangays, and they are also part of the People's Council, or a lot of them are also involved in making the projects or identifying the priority areas in which street should we focus on. Okay na po ba? Okay, let's move on. Okay. Sige. Can we flash it? Okay, maybe I'll discuss while we're waiting. Ayan. So, anyway, I will not read all of this, no? But based on our experience, we see several opportunities to further strengthen transport governance. First, local governments can play a larger role in transportation planning, where LGUs are responsible for implementation and interact with commuters every day, providing a more formal opportunity for LGUs to participate in national route planning policy and policy development would allow implementation experience to better inform future decisions. Second, transport policies can become more responsive to local context. National standards are important, but cities differ in travel patterns, geography, and mobility needs. Providing flexibility for evidence-based local adaptation would help policies respond more effectively to communities. Third, there is an opportunity to complement regulation with innovation. Our transport system has benefited from strong regulatory framework, but we also need policies that encourage innovation, whether through pilot projects, integrated mobility, digital tech, zero-emission transport, etc. Finally, we believe there is value in exploring a dedicated funding mechanism for sustainable local transport. Today, LGUs already invest significantly in public transportation, active mobility, and pedestrian infrastructure. Similar how to dedicated funding mechanisms support disaster risk reduction management, gender development, and education, a dedicated transport fund could provide more predictable resources for cities to sustain people-centered urban mobility initiatives. Next slide, please. I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Better transport systems are not created simply by asking people what they need. They are created when governments continuously listen, respond, and adapt. In Quezon City, we have learned that participation is not an event. It is a commitment. It means combining evidence with lived experiences. It means building partnership with communities. And more importantly, it means ensuring that every transport decision ultimately improves the daily life and journey of a Filipino commuter. Maraming salamat po.
Very much, Ms. Bernadette, for sharing those valuable insights. As a resident of QC, I recognize and truly appreciate the impact of QC's programs to alleviate the plight of local commuters, particularly the Libreng Sakay program, as well as other environmental friendly initiatives of the local government. Beyond government, meaningful transport governance also depends on active citizen participation and sustained engagement from the civil society organizations. The sector plays a critical role in amplifying commuter voices and ensuring the public policies remain grounded in the experiences of Filipino commuters and communities. To provide this important perspective, it is my pleasure to introduce our final panelist. Our final panelist is co-founder of Alt Mobility Philippines, a transport reform organization, and senior associate at Vrins and Partners. She has worked in the fields of transport, climate change, and public-private partnerships, spanning across roles in government, international cooperation, civil society, and private sector. She previously led the GIZ Urban Act project funded by Germany's International Climate Initiative on promoting low-carbon and resilient cities. As part of the Department of Transportation, she served as project manager and technical assistant to the Secretary for Open Data Initiatives and the development of the New Bohol and Bicol International Airports. Director Pat has a Bachelor of Science in Management Engineering from Ateneo de Manila University, and a Master of Science in Sustainability in Transport from the University of Leeds Institute for Transport Studies, where she was a Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office Chevening Scholar and recipient of the Sistra Prize for her graduate studies performance. Director Mariano, take it away.
I know it's been a long set of sessions so far, but I hope you, like me, found all of them very interesting. First, I'd like to thank the Development Academy of the Philippines for inviting us. I think the fact that civil society is now invited to spaces like this already speaks to how institutionalized this awareness of the need for feedback is. So, as shared, right, I was also previously in government over a decade ago at this point. It feels I feel so old, bigla. But before it was, we knew it had to be done, but the actual doing it took a bit more work. And that's honestly in part because there weren't a lot of civil society organizations for transport back then. We started Alt Mobility PH in 2018. So it's a transport reform organization. Our group has transport experts, transport practitioners, but also we are really just daily commuters who are passionate about fixing the transport mess that we all know we have to live with, right? So I think some of the ideas earlier that resonated with me are the fact that, or the question that Doc Gillian raised on, like, who do we think is more knowledgeable? Is it the commuter or the planner? And really, I feel like when you are the one experiencing it on the daily, that you can't replace that, no matter how much you study or how much data you have backing what you know, right? There's really something to be said for lived experience. So of course, obviously, we need to back it with evidence-based studies. We can't rely on anecdotes forever, right? But lived experience and involving the people who actually commute, who actually bike and walk every day, that's quite important. And just a bit more background on why we felt the need to start Alt Mobility PH. Again, back then, there weren't a lot of CSOs. Attorney, if you were already in house back then, right? I was under the impression that whenever there was a hearing, there would be commuter groups present, but they weren't actual commuter groups. They were more backed by, say, transport operator companies who wanted their insights in there. Whereas now, again, as pointed out earlier, you have a lot of organizations, including a massive Move as One coalition that has groups such as Alt Mobility, part of it, and Commuters for Change, and so there are a lot of voices now. And again, even if we are ultimately all calling for the same thing, which is better mobility, more livable cities, getting from A to B in a better way, all of our different experiences matter and have to be considered. So I think one of the things that really drove us to pushing for this then is we all know, of course, that transport gets us from where we are to where we need or where we want to be. But beyond that, how do we actually, what's the quality of that travel? What's the quality of that trip? And I think one of the things that we realized before is that people don't have the words, or they're not able to imagine better. And I think also one of the reasons why it was so hard to get people to participate in all of these consultations before was, imagine you're commuting, you're waiting for a bus 1 hour in the morning. You get on a bus, that's another hour ride. You get to the office, do a full day of work, sometimes fully on your feet, right? On the way home, you wait for a bus. It's gonna take longer, maybe hour and a half this time. And then you get home, before getting home, you transfer from bus to jeep to trike. So parang, if you're already that tired, where in that day will you think of, oh, this could be better? Sure, you would think that this is not the way it should be, but it's different when you want to put it into words that this could be better. So it's also very heartening to see these actual projects coming up, the pilot projects, the buses, the bike lanes. I know for some of them it's kind of like a two steps forward, one step back kind of thing, depending on where conversation is, right? But the fact that there are steps forward, that's quite important. That's very heartening, and that's also really what we wanted to do. We wanted to help change the narrative. We wanted to help people imagine how their transport could be. Just gonna go through this, but I just wanted to highlight inner cities, the scene on the right, very familiar, but also outside of our cities, in the more rural areas, and in general, obviously not in the Philippines, this picture, right? But everyone needs to move from their home to their work to school to public services. That's all important. And so transport is an enabler, and the lack of proper transport is limiting. So less access to opportunities for education and employment, less access to healthcare, especially as has been mentioned, if you're a person with disability, if you're a pregnant woman, if you're elderly, if you're a child. Like, if the streets are not safe, it really limits where you're able to go. If you are offered a great job in Makati but live in QC, like, I've heard a lot of people say that they've had to turn down opportunities just because they know that it's going to be so tiring to do the commute every day. And alternatively, they also can't really afford to move their entire life to a different city just for a job. So those are the things that we want to call attention to. Those are the things that we know we have to change. All of that said, and I think everyone would agree here, mobility is a right? Basic human need that people of all ages, abilities, gender, economic status should be able to enjoy with no fear for their personal safety, security, or health. I'm gonna look around lang. Does anyone disagree with this? Because I think we're gonna need a longer conversation if anyone disagrees with the fact that mobility is a right. Okay, no disagreement. That's great. So locally, like looking at the Philippines, we've also seen this in NEDAPA before, right? The Ambition 2040, where part of the Filipinos' vision for self is to have the freedom to go wherever we desire. So that's very much something we all know we need and we want for ourselves. Just gonna gloss over this too. The mobility priority pyramid, where obviously it's the active transport users, those who are walking, those who are on wheelchairs, maybe using canes, or even like those who do their shopping, like when you're holding a lot of things, right? You have less in one of the ways we put it is those who have less in wheels should have more in road space. You are taking up less space, you are also having a more difficult time of it. Obviously, not the case, not what's happening in our cities now. And so one of the first things we did as an organization is to work with legislators to file this bill. You may have heard it called the Magna Carta of Commuters or the Commuter Bill of Rights. And again, it's a bit sad, I suppose, that it has to be said, that it's something that has to be institutionalized in law, that mobility is a right and that commuters have rights too. But considering the history of how we've been doing our planning, considering like even if we have a lot of people already saying that we need to do better, just all the institutional difficulties that we're facing to actually implement better, maybe there is really still a need for something like this. Just a couple of things from the Commuter Bill of Rights, more relevant to our talk today, is that it includes the codification of involving citizens. So it's the key to commuters' basic rights and securing that is to empower commuters to participate in creating solutions to meet their evolving mobility needs. A lot has been said about this. I appreciate I really appreciate hearing from national government, from local government, the awareness and the acknowledgement that it has to be continuous. But I think just a couple more things that I'd like to add to this conversation is beyond the fact that a lot of people are too tired to comment. But right now at least we have online modes, right? But before we didn't have that. So, but beyond that also, when you actually have in-person consultations and they take place during work hours, you already limit who you get. And what also happens is, since our government work hours tend to coincide with the work hours of people who may be on a no work, no pay arrangements, they really can't miss it. It's going to be one of those things like, yes, this is important. Yes, we have feelings about this. Yes, we would want to be heard. But is it really worth missing a day's salary? Is it really worth it if my friend participated in that last week and wala naman nangyari, right? So all of these things have to be considered. So we also have to build, again, the confidence of the people to participate in these consultation processes. And just another thing I'd like to highlight. I really also appreciate that we're now talking about the difference between just consultation and collaboration, because that is a very important distinction. We've all done token consultations, and we'd really rather work together towards something that works for all of us. Right. Gonna skip through these parts, but just to share also, the Commuter Bill of Rights has provision of grievance and mechanisms, which I think DOTR and even QC has shared that they have. So I think institutionalizing that, implementing it nationwide, those would all be helpful. Health and safety, also quite important. And just to quickly run through the 8 rights that we have proposed in this bill. One is that commuters have a right to public transportation services that satisfy their mobility requirements. And this can only really be determined if you listen to what those requirements are. You can't assume that they want faster travel or that they want comfortable travel. If you assume that people want to be comfortable while traveling, that kind of ignores the fact that a lot of users are now on mga habal-habal, because that obviously means that they value speed over comfort. Commuters also have a right to safe, convenient, and affordable public transport services. They have the right to infrastructure for pedestrians, cyclists, and persons with disabilities. I think this is the important thing also, like the last mile, the connectivity, the fact that we can't be looking at projects in a vacuum. The network is important. And that's also why it's extra tricky, I feel, in something like Metro Manila. We were talking about the LPTRP before, and an LPTRP for Metro Manila is just a massive headache because of all of the different networks, the intercity, intracity routes, and the jurisdictions that come with it, right? But that all needs to be worked out. Commuters also have the right to a fair share of public road space. We've heard the figures, 80% commute, only 10% have cars. Most of our road space, 80% of our road space is for cars. That doesn't make sense. Commuters have the right to breathe clean air during travel. They have the right to information for efficient and convenient travel. And they have the right to getting the special attention immediately during service breakdowns in case there's an issue with their public transport. There. A couple of other salient points from the bill, again, have been touched on. It had proposed the establishment of a National Transport Data and Planning Center for reasons we all know and understand. Also, the establishment of an Office for Commuter Affairs. And it names several implementing agencies, some of which have been mentioned as part of the, I think, the group that Director Mendoza has been coordinating with. But I think just would like to highlight also presence of TPWH, DILG, DENR in this mix. Just because of the local coordination, your buses need to run on roads, and roads are still built by DPWH. I think lastly, though, would like to highlight here the inclusion of core concepts in the annual budget process. And since we are speaking to a mostly legislative audience today, I think this is also where things really matter. We were talking this morning or just over lunch about how we have projects, multi-year projects that technically have funds, but don't get the funds that are allocated to them. And that's really all tied to budget process. The bill has a call to action for all government officials to commute to their workplace by public transport or by bicycle at least once a week. Really great to hear that the OTR is doing that almost a year in. And, it's a call for the other agencies that we've been talking about to also do the same. I think just last couple of points is, as a civil society organization, it's a unique place because, one, yes, we attend consultations, but also we're kind of able to talk to different groups of people and somehow bring them together. So last year, we had organized this Philippine Mobility Summit, which was backed by a series of brown bag sessions, technical discussions, but we did this all in partnership with the DOTR, DPWH, DBM again because of the budget concerns, LGUs, civil society, other civil society, academe, international organizations, and the lower right picture is the mobility pledge of commitment, where everyone's saying that okay, we want to do better. What we want to do now for this coming year is do a series of chats to actually translate those pledges into action. So we're working with Cebu, the province of Cebu, for a mobility series this year, where we want to do an incubator to translate the great ideas or the principles into action, into projects like pilot projects that can be sustained by either government or private sector. Because again, we all have a role in this, and it's just a matter of coming together, discussing, and agreeing on how we want to move forward towards that shared goal of improving mobility. Okay, I think I'll end with this question, which I hope at this point we have many answers to. How can we make urban design more efficient, inclusive, and sustainable? And I think that's a quick answer to that. We think of the commuters too. Thank you.
Very much, Director Mariano, for sharing the civil society organization's perspective on today's discussion. And for the record, I share your dream of inverting the triangle road usage. Pero sana mangyari before 2040. Baka sana hindi tayo umabot dun. Your presentation highlighted that because civil society organizations are closely connected to the communities they serve, their work helps ensure the transport projects reflect how people actually travel, where they face barriers, and what trade-offs they are willing to accept. Our panel discussions this afternoon has shown us that building a more responsive public transport system is a shared responsibility. From international good practices and national policy making to local implementation and citizen advocacy, each perspective has reinforced the importance of placing commuters at the center of transport governance. We certainly have much to reflect on, and I'm sure many questions to ask our esteemed panelists. We will have the opportunity to continue this conversation during our open forum shortly. For now, we will take a 5-minute break. We kindly invite everyone to return promptly at 3:18 p.m. for the interactive panel discussion and question and answer session. Once again, thank you to our panelists, and we will see everyone shortly. Welcome back and thank you for rejoining us. Let us now begin with our open forum. But before we start, a few quick reminders. For our Facebook Live audience, please post your questions in the comment section. For those in the Zoom room, you may send your questions to the Google Form link for your questions in the chat, and I will deliver them to our dear speakers. Later as well, once we have accommodated a few questions from the form, we'll accept questions live from the audience. Simply click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, kindly turn on your video and audio, introduce yourself with your name and institution, then proceed with your question. Throughout the afternoon, we have heard a common message from each of our speakers, that meaningful transport reform is not simply about building better infrastructure. It is also about building better ways of listening to the people who rely on these systems every day. With that in mind, I'd like to begin our open forum with a critical questions. How can decision makers balance technical expertise, political realities, and citizen participation in shaping the future of Philippine public transport? I'd like to request our speakers for their insights on this question, starting with Mr. Kimura.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So, yes, there's sometimes conflict between the technical experts' view and political and decision makers' view and public view, and even among public views, sometimes there is conflicts in the opinions. So honestly speaking, this is now one solution. So the first, we need to identify, what's really wants. Sometimes, the request from the public or even political decision makers doesn't mean the actually physical request. We need they want to have something, physical thing, but the real needs is not the physical things. The physical things might help to address their concerns, but they sometimes there's other options to solve the issues. So I think we need to discuss what is the real solution. Then often usually public opinion is there, not focusing on the project. Sometimes technical expert is paid for the service, right? So that is why they can spend like 8 hours a day, for that one. So, but usually public cannot use such time for these ones. So basically, primary responsibility is this technical expert, to prepare the like options to solve the issues, and to address the conflict. But however, I'm sorry, it's like a lengthy answer. But however, ultimately speaking, this political decision maker, especially this legally regulated system, who is the ultimate decision makers, even that we need to listen to the people. But finally, ultimately speaking, this decision makers has to make a decision based on the comments provided from the technical experts and the public. So this is kind of democratic system, I would say. So it's important to listen the voice of the people, but ultimately speaking, we may end up some conflicts still exist. That's the reality of the world, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Kimura. How about Director Mariano?
I think just to add to what Shuji has said, I feel like transport is one of those things where everyone, again, experiences it. So it's not like you really need to be an absolute expert to know what works for you, for your experience, for the experience of your family. So in that sense, in instances where there are conflicts between what different groups are saying, between the different interests, I feel like that's really a time for the policymakers to go and experience the transport system themselves, to, in a sense, meet the people where they are, to see what the experience actually is like. Because there's really no replacement for that. And we've seen around the world the different examples of how cities have changed when their mayors, for example, would take wheelchairs along San Francisco and realize how difficult that is. So that's something that we, I think, can still hold our public officials, our policymakers to.
Thank you, Miss Director Mariano. And let's hear from the local government perspective regarding this question.
This question is very perfect for local governments, no? So first, in Quezon City, we're very lucky that our city mayor actually has a policy that we have to listen to our people, no? Another is that she wants decisions to be data-driven. So we present data, we present the results of stakeholders consultation, and give solutions to each of these problems. So we're very lucky for Quezon City. But as a technocrat, one way is really informing the public first of what the standards are, what the policies usually are, how other cities do it, what is the outcome or the output of other cities who did the same project, or what is the projected benefit for the people doing certain kinds of projects. No, after informing the public of what it what could happen, what could be, what the objectives are, I think these people, they know enough, or they're experienced enough to see what they want, because after all, when you invite stakeholders, these are stakeholders who are really commuting, who are really biking to work, walking, so they know, experience enough. And even if they don't have that technical knowledge, I mean, walking and commuting, it's really a basic thing we do day to day. So what's important is when your data and your stakeholder consultation results, they actually usually match naman. It's very few occasions naman na they don't. The strongest lang is the political will of the administration, of the technocrats, to actually propose or recommend solutions that's really better for our people. But anyway, if I also may add though, being in the government and our colleagues also, no, our audience in the government service, it's also important to balance us, government, as the driver for development, and also being participatory enough in our decisions. But at the end of the day, we listen, we hear, and we incorporate all of these comments. But we in the government are also in charge of taking all of this and moving it to develop what we have to do, or do what we have to do in such a way that governments should. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Mendoza, would you like to add?
This question is very timely, sir, because we are just recalibrating our projects in terms of the limited budget that we have in the government right now. So that's the political reality. So I think this year, 2.9% lang po yung budget allotted for the transport, for the whole national government budget, at pang top 8 lang po ang DOTR. And I think we really need to balance citizen feedback and technical evidence, because citizen feedback po kasi help us understand how policies affect people in their daily lives sa kanila pong pag-commute. And then second po, yung technical studies po kasi provides evidence-based and the most efficient and the feasible solution. So yun.
Thank you. Dr. Gillian?
Thank you. Very timely po yung question, no? So it's really about balancing, and based from my experience, I'm actually, I think my discipline is into transportation planning, but I usually end up as into stakeholder engagement, meaning I'm the one moderating the issues between the government officials vis-a-vis the commuters or those who are representing in those consultations. But I think the key is really to be honest. Like, number one, being honest on what's the limit, right? Because mostly the participants or the stakeholder got so many wish lists. The wish list can be very, very long, right? So I think Director Pat highlighted the difference between a wish and a want. What is the wants? No, what's the most important thing? So whenever we frame, I think, the discussion on what the limitations of the local government or the government is, I think the stakeholders are quite aware, right? So they would try, of course, because it's important that we hear. So what I usually do as a moderator is I will show them, okay, that's possible, but this is the only budget that they have. This is the policy that we have. This is the limitation of their of the LGU. So sometimes the wish list is actually beyond also what the LGU could do. So you really have to strike that balance. And I think the key sometimes, especially when there's stakeholder consultation, is to ensure that there's someone who would moderate that balance. So I think I feel a little bit effective on that because I'm really familiar with the transportation, being a commuter myself of the different modes. No? I just want to share, for instance, my experience. There was like this big discussion between the tricycles and the commuters, right? The commuters know they need them. And then the tricycle association is like highlighting that they need to be as many as possible, no? Then we show them the data. So this is where data would be very important. The survey showed this is the only amount that you're getting. So either you improve the system and at least respond to the need, because I think the complaint of the stakeholders then is that the fare is too expensive, too high. Right? It's not really practical. So we try to use, then that's where we use the data. And that's where I think very important that the LGU also, or any government agency should know what is it that they can share also with the stakeholder. Because I think as stakeholder, we're also very practical, right? It's just like you're part of the family, you know the limitation. But until we tell them, of course we have the vision, the goal. But if you ask what's your wish, of course they will give everything, right? I think that's common, that's a nature. But I think we have to give the limit also, and to make sure that this is only what we could do. And then you meet. And then you also ask for suggestion, their wish, their suggestion. And I feel it's very effective because sometimes you'd be surprised on the kind of information that they're willing to share. No? So for me, I think that's a good balance. When they ask, of course, they will give you all what they wish. They can also give suggestion, and I think that's where LG you can also come in. Okay, we can do that. We can work together, and I think this is where what we want to have, like this really co-planning on collaborating. So maybe that's how I could suggest to strike that balance. Thank you.
Thank you to our resource persons for elaborating on the issues regarding the policy issues in shaping the future of the Philippine public transport. And hearing from our resource persons, I think it's clear that there's no perfect formula in addressing this issue, especially that of the complexity of the situations and also the socio-economic and other factors affecting these issues. So I think we move to the question and answer session of this question and answer portion, and I would like to pull out questions from the online submission form. And for our first question, comes from a participant from the Senate, and this is addressed to Dr. Guillen. And the question goes like this. Actually, there are two questions. First is, how should we balance the move to develop the transportation system versus the concerns of drivers of PUVs who will be affected? And second question is, how do we treat groups who are resistant to change due to valid concerns as well?
That's really timely, no? It's a bit of a challenge, no? We've been doing some studies on that. How do we balance? I think the first thing that we need to do is really understand what is the situation. And I think this is what I've been trying to explain also earlier, no? About how do we really balance? It's actually highlighting what are the data that we could share with them. And with that, I think this is also an issue for the government, right? What is it that we could offer? When we started with the public transport modernization program, it starts with the policy, right? And part of the policy is really to involve the drivers, right? We all know the drivers are into the informal sector. When I say informal sector, they're not registered in all our employment and statistics. They don't get that. They don't have regular salaries. They're all dependent on what? On the fare. And the fare is dependent on the number of people who would ride the vehicle, right? So depending on the vehicle, and I've been telling this from the start, I think transport is investment heavy. When I say investment heavy, it's not just about the mode, it's about the whole system. And as mentioned, I think by all the speakers, it's a whole ecosystem that we have to look into. So go back to how do we balance that? And I think one of the government goal, and they're doing it already, is like first let this group understand, is it possible that you get a regular salary? So I think that's a question not just for the transport association, no, and the goal and what the government is doing based on the policy is, can we convert them into a transport cooperative? But this is a challenge right now. Not many people are aware what a cooperative is, right? So even that, I don't know if there's someone who's studying about cooperative, transport cooperative, and every time I've been asked, what's the benefit? Well, I know a transport cooperative, but it happens to be in the airline industry, who has all this business, you know? So they're not dependent on the fare. So until we answer that, I think that's where we could help the jeepney. So I mean, maybe this transition, no, to modernization. But what we want, they say, but jeepney, for instance, is part of our culture. Yes, it's part of our culture. I do agree, and that's why I want them to be part of our tourism system. Yeah. So, and I saw already, and I can share this though with, I saw a hotel actually utilizing the jeepney just for for the tourists. And it happened in other countries. Bangkok already have done it with their tuk-tuk, so we can do it. But why do we need to modernize? I also want the drivers, the operators to understand that it's also good for them, because it's not easy to drive a jeepney. I don't know if you've driven one, but I tried. It was very difficult, right? So every time I had this discussion, I always highlight that I'm trying it from your perspective because we want to improve your system. Right? And then I would interview those who modernize, and they would say, oh, they like it. But again, we go back to the issue. We go back to the issue that they don't have enough means to invest. Then this is where the government, I think, would come in, right? Do we have subsidies? And I think Quezon City is also already doing a good job, but by making sure, making sure that you have this libre sakay, right? Meaning, all these jeepney the buses actually is being paid for by the government, by the LGU, right? The same way in Davao. I'm familiar in Davao. This transition is really important to them. And then you'd be surprised because now it's the jeepney drivers wanting to be part of the system. So I think that balance we need to first understand, no? Because otherwise, the jeepney, I think, will always protest, no? Because we're not maybe really giving them that opportunity. But if they've been part of the system and they experience it, I think they would change their perspective. But again, do we have that? Then I go back, no, to the government. Do we have enough mechanism to do this transition? For them to understand that what we need is really a good employment, and not just part of an informal sector, which is happening, I think, in most countries, developed countries, without a really good public transport service, mass transit. Yeah. I hope I answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gillian. And considering that PUVMP is a project of DOTR, I think it's only fair that we need a response from our representative from DOTR.
Actually po, the PUBMP din, now the PTMP is example of how government is open to changing policies based on feedback. As discussed earlier po ni ma'am, we are still refining po the framework and then how we're going to operationalize ito. I believe po the road transport sector unit po namin have continuously discussing this with the operators, the commuters, and of course po yung ating other transport stakeholders po.
Thank you, Director Mendoza. So I hope that answers the query of our participant from the Senate. And so for our next question, this one is addressed to Miss Bernadette, and from Facebook Live, Mr. Paul Argamosa. And his question goes like this. The free bus system in QC competes against the PUV. How did the LGU overcome the resistance of PUV in accepting this? Will QC expand this program? Will QC integrate PUV drivers or compensate them for their losses?
Okay. Siguro, let me, how do I say it? Hindi man correct. Siguro, let me just address the first statement, no, that the QCT bus takes away income from the PUVs, no. First po, the routes were designed so as not to compete directly with the PUVs existing in the area. Remember, the city bus was designed or was implemented during the height of the pandemic. During that time, no public transportation systems were in place. So we rolled out the QCity bus network, and the demand for the city bus system, its existing route, is very high. No, we have a 40,000 daily passenger trip average, and since 2020 we have served over 49 million passenger trips. So, and we do these surveys regularly. So we understand that if we take away the routes that is currently being covered, no, there will be thousands of people affected. And another is, our city bus routes have designated pick-up and drop-off points. That is actually being complained about by the passengers. Why? Because it's somehow away from the usual loading and unloading areas of the PUVs. And we made it specifically this way so as not to compete again with the PUVs. So somehow getting from your work or your residence to a Quezon City bus stop is kinda more inconvenient rather than actually loading or boarding a PUV, no? So these were intentional. But after running siguro for 5 years, travel patterns evolve. And maybe this also reflects why many passengers still choose to ride the city bus, even if it's more inconvenient because the bus stops are designated, because the bus stops are far from their point A. But the buses are scheduled. The buses arrive reliably. They are sure that a bus will arrive. So maybe this is also a reflection that Filipinos or our residents also demands for a more reliable public transportation. That is why they are still choosing the city bus, even if it's more inconvenient, because the lines, oh my God, our lines sometimes, they have to wait for an hour to board. So even if you say that, anyway, argumentative pa po yung yung we taking away part of their income, because we also have studied data on route overlap, and the franchised routes of the LTFRB itself overlaps each other. So it's not just the city bus affecting their income naman po. But the city government designed the city bus so as not to compete, and changes in transportation patterns or travel patterns may be a result of the wants of the Filipino or the needs of the public, the riding public. Yun lang po.
So how about the response to the two other questions? Like, will QC expand, and will QC integrate the PUV drivers in your program?
Apo. So for the expansion, wala pa po. There are no talks about expanding, but we are transforming routes to electrify it, fully electrified routes. So we have 2 so far, fully electric routes. We have 6 more to go. And then for the hiring of drivers, no, of course, we encourage our drivers, no, to apply with the city government to drive electric buses, no. But we also take note that the driver's license code is different from PUVs to our electric buses, no. So they have to have license code D. We also conducted multiple dialogues with the transport service entities who they claim are being affected. We showed them data, and actually they don't want the Banda program to stop. They don't want the program to stop because their wives, their children, their neighbors, they're using it. They're benefiting from the program. What they want is to join the program. But I cannot, the program is being procured by the city through public bidding. We cannot naman contract them directly. There are no means for that time. But we are continuously exploring this if it is possible, no. But yeah, so as for the drivers hiring, yes po, we encourage them to apply with the city government as long as they meet the requirements for the driver's license code and the age, no. Yun lang naman po.
Thank you. Ms. Mendoza, do you wish to add regarding the issue?
I believe po right now the road sector of the DOTR is currently revising and refining po yung guidelines on the route rationalization po. As mentioned earlier, may mga challenges po tayo na kailangang i-address. But more importantly po sa level po namin, no, at the integrated policy and planning unit, ang amin po naman pong ginagawang alignment is closely coordinating po kami with the SHUD in terms of aligning the transport planning with the land use planning po. And happy to share that we have already discussed moving forward on how to incorporate a comprehensive master planning approach in terms of transportation na hindi lamang po road-based ang ilalagay po sa CLUP guidelines. So yun po, sir.
Thank you. So I hope that that answers the questions of our participant from Facebook Live. So for our third question came from a PWD commuter from HREP, and anyone from our resource persons can answer this question. The question goes like, I used to be a PUV commuter, but after I became a PWD, I can no longer do because of the difficulty in climbing jeeps and buses. I can only take TNBS, which are costly. What steps are being done to address PWD accessibility? I guess that question.
I think ang una po is on the modernization program, but more importantly po, no, as I mentioned earlier, we are closely working with the National Council for Disability Affairs to address these issues po. At the same time po, meron po ang aming road sector din na engagement this year po to have yung mga bus standards po din po to incorporate yung mga accessibility concerns, gender concerns. At the same time po, mabigyan po ng guidance yung mga po natin, no, operators, LGUs and other transport stakeholders po on how are we going to address and to have an inclusive transport system, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, I think we move to the perhaps we can now ask questions live from the audience. And for the record, we have 120 Zoom participants. So from our Zoom participants, may I know if our friends from Congress have questions? And we have from HREP, it's Miss Marilyn Manait. Ms. Manait, you can start your question. Please unmute.
I actually wrote my question and addressed it to anybody who can answer my question. It's more an observation rather than a question because as I said, parang yung una kong raise about the feedback na parang there seemed to be a mistrust from the public in filing the complaints because the public seems to doubt that government will act on the complaint anyway. Pangalawa, yung parang ang transportation plan natin, rather than promoting mass transport system, parang we're promoting the use of more cars. So there's a need to either widen the road or construct more roads, which is counterproductive because it lessens it does not respond to a people-centric transport system. So parang ang idea ko kasi parang we develop more spaces for the public so that we can walk more, pero ang nangyayari, parang we're promoting the use of more cars. Tapos yung, ano pa ba yung sinabi ko? Yung nabanggit kanina yung Colombia model, di ba? Yung Colombia, they develop open spaces for the city so that yung sabi kasi ng mayor dati na ang mga mahihirap, wala yung resources na magpa-aircon So, imbes na pupunta sila sa bahay sila, they can use the streets, the open spaces to have, to have more air, more cooler, ganon. So, parang tayo kasi, parang baliktad ang ginagawa natin. Parang we are promoting the use of more cars, tapos so ganon. So, parang baliktad. Parang gusto kong makita sana yung plan ng government na gano'n na people-centric siya rather than being car-centric.
So, who wants to respond or
Ako po, magandang hapon po ma'am. Kanina po, siguro po nabigyan namin kayo ng snapshot on the active transport strategic master plan po. No? We are refining na po itong master plan na po ito that will guide us po in implementing a more walkable and more cyclable lanes po. No? And we are moving away po from car-centric na operations when it comes to providing transportation. So, actually po, kaya ko po ito ngayon sinasabi ay dahil we are actually advocating for a more higher budget po for the active transport. So, sana po matulungan po kami ng ating mga kasama sa Kongreso dahil nais po naming dagdagan dahil ang dami po talagang nagre-request nito, ma'am. And hopefully po, this is I'm trying to get this opportunity po na ilabas po natin yung mga ganitong datos, yung mga problema po natin na nakikita natin sa mga kalsada para po lalo pong mas madagdagan yung pondo po ng aming Active Transpo Master Plan.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Gillian, please.
Dagdag ko lang, no? I think you mentioned about the Colombia, but thank you for sharing yung need ng government. Then, siguro the other way of thinking about it also is how we as an office, as a government, not government, but private sector, can assist our government. So, one thing is, yun nga sabi niyo, ma'am, nagiging car-centric. Bakit ba nagiging car-centric? Siguro kailangan din po nating tingnan meron bang policy yung ating mga private sector or business wherein they promote public transport more than the use of car? Kasi from what I know po, no, and you can correct me, usually the companies, diba, parang they offer free loan, right? That itself is already something.
Regulate that.
Yeah. Sir, ma'am. But I think
be able to regulate that.
I don't know if it's about regulation, but it's also kasi as I mentioned, no, I studied my transportation planning in Japan. What I experienced in Japan is what they offer, no, is really tickets, free tickets. Like, they gave that as part of the company incentive. It's not about giving free parking spaces. It's actually public transport. So that I experienced. I also experienced, for instance, that if you live like 3 kilometers away from my university at that time, at least I'm speaking from my own experience in Japan, it's not a government policy, but the university has a policy that you cannot get a car, you cannot bring a car. But for me, that is something. Meaning, I mean, if you want to have a car, you can buy a car, but you have to make sure you have parking spaces and all the other requirements, no? But what I experienced is it's not and I check, is it the government policy? Maybe Shuji can mention. But then I realized it's not a government policy. It's an initiative of the university so that less need for parking, no? So, I mean, the people now, some who want to bring car would live far away from the university because at least they can bring a car, right? So that's one. But I also, I work in Japan also, no, for at least 2 years. I commuted, I think. My commute is like around 1 hour and a half, because I want to have a bigger apartment rather than stay in Tokyo with smaller apartments, so I live quite far. But I never had a problem with the transfer, but at least the office would give me like a discount card so I can use, I can even choose whether it's a bus or a train. And it's something that I think I've never seen here in the Philippines being promoted. Like, I have never heard wherein, and the reason I'm sharing this because once I had an interview, I think in the MRT station, and I've been wondering, you have the beep card, right? And then I was told that, oh ma'am, it's nice that I think I would load my beep card at least 200, so that's good for a week for me. And then the MRT personnel told me that, ma'am, most of our transport user, they will only, I think they load every day. So that's you have a long line. So it like defeats the purpose. And then I realized maybe because that's the only amount that they can, that's the reality. We have this inequality in our city. Not everyone could afford to load your card for 100 pesos. So that's a realization for me. And I was wondering, what if the offices, the companies give them that, right? That's a load, and that would make things easier for them, right? Rather than, because there's a tendency, I think QC has been telling us, oh, you'll be surprised, we have long lines, right? But because they want free, correct? And I think we have to strike that balance. But I think I'm sharing this, because that's what I've experienced, And we all say, how do we make our country more public transport centric, right? When our not even internal policy actually promote cars. And there's nothing wrong to promoting cars. No, I'm not against cars because they also show a need for the economy. But what I'm saying is, how about the majority, right? Yeah. So maybe that's where I'm coming from. Sorry. I hope I help on that.
So now that regarding the policy on car ownership was mentioned, can we ask?
Quickly, in Japanese case, just supplement. So basically, Japanese companies or government doesn't have much parking space, especially in the center of the Tokyo. Okay, other cities totally different, but in the center of the Tokyo or Osaka, big cities, usually we don't have much parking space and provide a lot of subsidy for the commuting, the charges. But this is possible because we have options, right? We have public transport system exists. That is why, we can come through the public transport system. But in Metro Manila, it's a little bit still challenging, right? So the rail lines limited, also, bus line and also GPS lines are not always reliable. So these things needs to be improved. That is why the OTR is promoting, public transport modernization. So once it's, actually, policy side, regulation side should be, hand in hand together so that, new reliable public transport and some penalization of the private transport should come together.
Would you like to add, Ms.?
Yes. So just to add, and I think just stepping back a bit to Ms. Manayat's initial points and to Director Mendoza's comments, I think very good points, right? And it's definitely one thing to promote active transport, which we're all happy about. We need more of it. We need public spaces. But disincentivizing car use, I do agree that cars are not evil or something. Like there is a need for them, but it's a different thing to plan for them. And even as we promote active transport, I also do think there's a need for conscious decision to reel in all the investments that's going into roads that are being built, especially in city. Like there's a space for roads, definitely. There's a need for it if we want to reach far-flung areas. But if we're talking about Metro Manila, which is heavily congested, like why would we want to use our limited space for more space for cars when we can, on the one hand, at the same time, parang actively disincentivize that and actively also promote active transport, public transport, open spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Ms. Manait, are you satisfied with the response of our resource persons? You're muted. Ms. Manait, you're muted. Let's turn on you.
Yeah. Ayaw kong i-unmute. Anyway, yeah, while I do, tama kasi that there has to be a strong partnership with the private sector kasi yun nga, as is what mentioned earlier na wala talagang active promotion also even with the private sector. Pero I think government should be, gobyerno yun eh. So it has the resources to implement, to regulate, and to impose policies para nga maging mas people-centric yung transport system. Kasi we need more green parks in the cities. Diba? Kunyari, sa ibang bansa, ako, site ko na lang siguro, Ho Chi Minh siguro, ang laki-laki ng park nila sa city. And may mga ano din sila, pero malaki yung park. And I think it serves the people better with more trees in the city rather than have more streets. Kasi katulad ng sinabi niya nga kanina, limited ng space sa city eh. Pag prinomote pa natin yung use of more cars, talaga magbibuild tayo ng more roads. Mauubusan na tayo ng space. Baka eventually lahat na lang roads na lang yan. Diba? So parang, hindi ko naman sinasabi na we're not saying that we don't use cars because as mentioned earlier, meron naman talagang need for cars. But to promote ito sa policy, baka parang hindi yata tama. Metro Manila, ubos na yung, wala na nga tayong mga parks. And we need more parks. We need cleaner air. We need more oxygen in the city. Diba? Yun lang.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Manait. Thank you for joining us. So, our next participant to ask live is Novel Bangsal from HREP. Are you still there? Please proceed.
Yeah, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. So, I'm Novel Bangsal from the House of Representatives. I'm also a member of the CBIL's Senior Leaders Program. Very quickly, my question is addressed to Director Nessa Mendoza and DOTR and Dr. Daniel Gilen. While the country continues to invest heavily in roads and transport infrastructure, commuter-oriented facilities such as the PUB stops, terminals, service contracting, and local public transport route plans, which I am very sure this is still very problematic insofar as compliance of LGUs are concerned. All these facilities remain severely underfunded. How does the OTR and probably the PWH also intend to ensure that the future transport investments prioritize actual mobility outcomes such as shorter travel times, more reliable transport, public transport, and safer commuter facilities rather than simply increasing infrastructure spending? So what reforms are needed to better align national investments with local transport planning and commuter needs? And how can participatory transport planning help close these implementation gaps? Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, sir. No? Sa amin po, sa Transport Policy and Planning Service, one of our main initiative right now is the Philippine Transport System Master Plan. So it will answer po yung concern regarding the investments for the future transport projects. At the same time po, this will incorporate on the modalities on how to implement these projects other than the use of public funds. So we also have an opportunity for public-private partnership. And then, of course, collaboration with other stakeholders such as the private sector. So earlier po, no, 2 beses po yata nating nakita yung Kamuning busway. So right now po, we are grateful to SM because they also help us to have similar busway po sa North Ave and then po sa Mega Mall. And then, meron po bang taga-private sector dito, no? So, na-mention din po kanina ni Doc na we really need their help because yung initiative po ng SM help us to implement projects, no? We provided po yung design, the details, ano po ba dapat yung accessibility considerations, but the private sector po implemented the project.
Ms. Gillian?
From my end, because I'm from the academe, I think one of my role is really to document, no, to document and learn from all these experiences. But one of the way to really close the gap is the involvement really of our private sector when it comes to investment. We always say it's investment heavy, and I think the private sector also needs to know their role, right? Right now, I think the malls are realizing the importance of public transport. 20 years ago, I don't think that was the case, right? Normally, I think na-realize nila that they better, captive market nila yung commuters, right? So, if the goal is really, and we all know that if we involve the private sector, they're also involved in our development of our space, of our urban spaces. Kasi right now, ang trust is more on, you mentioned about transit-oriented, but making sure that the malls are now integrated, right? Hindi na ngayon na malls lang, no? Hindi na siya ganon. It's really an integrated community. So, the malls, or maybe not just the malls, no, but the private sector, the developers can also assist greatly the government, no. I think one of the role of the government is really ensuring that the regulations are in place, making sure that it's really good for everyone. Siguro yung how do we, now that we've reached the level, no, income level, upper middle class na tayo, right? I think now the goal is really how do we close in the gap of the rich and the poor. Because now you can see who's really rich and who's really poor. If you go to developed countries or other countries that, I mean, many of you have been exposed of, hindi nyo mararamdaman yung mahirap o mayaman. Pero dito sa Pilipinas, ramdam na ramdam siya. Tapos, mas nararamdaman siya ng nagpa-public transport. Kaya nga, nagiging goal, I think, ng karamihan, maybe it's better na matraffic ako kasi convenient ako, mukha akong social, di ba? Comfort is one. I also heard, and I don't know how true, but I was told na there are some developers, I think, that they're not allowing public transport to like pass in their area because it somehow affect their how do I say, there's prestige, right? So, I think that's a reality, but I think we should get away with that thinking, and I think this is where the developer should also try to understand that, hey, the common public, we want, to close in that gap. So, it's more than, now that you mentioned that, I think transport is a great equalizer, if I may say so. No, so it's a right, as Ms. Pat highlighted, but I also think it's a great equalizer because all of us would like to travel, would like to commute, and I guess that's where I'm coming from. No, so that's how I think we could help, close this gap. So also reflect, like if you're from the house, how many of the sector really is using public transport, no? How's your parking? Do you have public transport stop in front of the office? I think that's something to reflect on. Are your official really taking public transport? Because if they do, things would, I think, be better. So that would, I think, close that kind of gap. But if they're also having that issue, then yeah, I think that's why we are in this situation for a while, no? So anyway, I see that change anyway is happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gillian, for that elaboration on the question of Mr. Bangsal. So I think thank you for the questions, the viewers. Listening to the discussion, I think we've done a good job unpacking and dissecting citizen participation, institutional collaboration, and responsive governance. But ultimately, this principle must be translated into policies that endure beyond individual administrations or programs. For us in Congress, however, this raises an equally important question, which I would like to ask to our panelists. How can policymakers make difficult transport decisions that may be unpopular in short term but beneficial in the long term? Can we ask Mr. Kimura?
Okay, so for the decision makers to make decision, surely support from public is necessary, honestly speaking. So I think this public consultation is kind of sounding activity from the policy decision makers. That's why I explained that consultation throughout project cycle is most important. So even like master planning stage, if you listen to the public and public is so against about the construction of the railway during the master plan stage, okay, this is not popular policy for the decision makers. So I think earlier engagement is necessary for these development of transport system, so that the policy decision maker can hear the opinion of the public from the super early stage. Usually in a super early stage, their attitude is not so fighting, right? If once the construction is already decided, okay, we'll build this road here, then the people against the road is kind of fighting to the decision makers. But during the master planning stage, it's just a planning, so they are not fighting each other. Basically, I prefer to have this road here or rail system here. So the early consultation will help for the policy decision makers to make proper and cooperative decisions. Thank you.
Ms. Mariano?
Thank you.
You may add.
I think definitely on the early engagement, but I think beyond the sharing about the project and then hearing what the thoughts are of the public, I think there's really that element of also inspiring the public, getting them behind the vision. There's a lot to be said also for, again, there's like people know they want better, but they don't necessarily know what better looks like. And there are examples out there, but they might not be exposed to it. So if there's a way for the policymaker, for the program officers to, kind of show people that, hey, this is what we could have, then even if there are concerns, you can slowly chip away at them. I mean, you'll also, of course, tweak the initial vision to fit into what's contextually relevant, right? But, inspire, I think, is one thing. The other thing is to set an example. I said earlier the importance of meeting people where they are. It's a bit, when you see a public official saying that we actually don't need those buses, but they've never taken a bus, that immediately makes you think, well, what would you know? So if you have a public official who also commutes, who walks or who takes a bike, and then you see them pushing for something, the people are more likely to believe and get on board with that message. And I think just the last point I'd like to make here, since this involves a lot of engagement, it's a lot of time, investment for the staff, for the the higher level officials. I think it also really needs a lot of resources, and I think I'm just going to echo a point that Director Mendoza said earlier. As we are talking to legislative staff and budgets are very important, it's very difficult to do any of these surveys, to do any of these engagements, if the offices who are supposed to be implementing the programs, who are supposed to be tweaking them to best meet the needs of the people, don't have the staff to do it, don't have the updated technology to do it. So just highlighting the importance of the role that budget and resourcing plays in this whole scheme of delivering public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I totally agree with the manifestations of Mr. Kimura and Ms. Mariano regarding the complexities and the need to explain to the people about the immediate impact and the benefits of the long-term projects in shaping the more responsive policies in the transport sector. So, do you have some reactions from our live audience? Anyone? If none, I think that concludes our Q&A session. Thank you to our speakers and reactors for your thoughtful engagement, and to our audience for the insightful questions that enriched today's discussion. As we move towards the conclusion of this lecture, I'd like to invite our speakers and reactors to share their final reflections and recommendations, starting with Dr. Gillian. Final thoughts, ma'am?
Thank you very much again for this opportunity. I think for my final thoughts when it comes to participatory urban transport planning, at the end of the day, I think policymakers, officials, as well as maybe the public in general, when it comes to transport, I think we need to be smart. When I say smart, we utilize the importance of data, the importance of available information. They're out there. I think we have a good repository of experiences abroad, and we can learn from them also. So that's why we need to be smart. We need to be efficient on utilizing, because our time is quite limited. The need is now. So I think we need to work smart. But more than that, I think it's very important that we care. So when we say we care on making sure that the infrastructure is being maintained properly. Maybe I'm sharing this because I also feel that I think the public in general should also play a role, in our transport. I feel bad whenever I see like a terminal or a stop is had all these vandals or have some garbage, right? So I think we all have to play a role in ensuring that we have to play a role in thanking also our public transport drivers, especially if it's free and they're making it really meet your objective, I think sometimes we forget that we need to care, I think in transport, there should be mobility of care, not because there's elderly or there's young women and all the vulnerable groups, In general, we need to care and make sure that we create a better city, and make sure that this accessibility and mobility is inclusive. So I think that's my last reflection. Thank you.
Ms. Mendoza?
For me naman po, so not every suggestion po can be implemented immediately, but every concern po help us better understand saan po ba natin kailangan yung improvements. And then, a lot has been said naman po earlier. And for me po, my reflection right now is to actually strengthen po yung aming mga processes. At the same time, capacitate po ang aming personnel when it comes to participatory approach. Kasi we need to engage the people ng tama po. We need to ask the right questions na hindi po tayo magiging imposing po sa kanila pong mga magiging mungkahi o kanila pong mga suggestion. So, yun po, sir.
Ms. Bernadette?
Ayan. All five of us, yung 5 speaker, we spoke about the same things. We advocated for the same things. But let us not confuse this with how policy should be. Policies it's not one size fits all. Cities varies, transportation pattern, travel pattern varies, it evolves. So the policies we should craft, the policies we should create, hindi pwedeng kung ano yung sa isa, yun din yung sa lahat. This is where the gap between the national government or the policymakers and the implementers happen if the policy is not reflective of the realities on ground. So even if the five of us here talks about the same things and represents various agencies, now various level of agencies, it doesn't necessarily mean that the policies we should create are also a one-size-fits-all policy. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Mariano?
I think as a reflection, it's really, again, great to hear that the conversation is at this point now. I mean, when I first met Doc Gillian many years ago, we were very far from this. We were at some point, I think, fighting for elevated walkways, which we now know is not really what you're supposed to be fighting for. I think a little, like, epiphany moment I had is that elevated walkways are not pedestrian infrastructure. They're car infrastructure. It doesn't make lives easier for pedestrians. It's only the cars who find it easier. So I guess just for me, the progress is there, and it's really great to see it. Hopefully it translates into concrete, tangible projects that people can feel more quickly. But yeah, I think that's nice to see everyone gathered speaking the same message. Thank you.
Last but not the least, Mr. Kimura.
Yeah, thank you very much. So again, everyone is basically in the same position. Okay, so more participatory approach is welcomed. So I think this is for the policymakers meeting. So I think the important thing institutionalize this consultation or an engagement system in the policy making decision or project decisions. So that's something if the policymakers can consider that kind of approach, that would be really honor of us to having this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give our panelists another round of applause. As we reach the final stop of our journey this afternoon, allow me first to extend my sincere appreciation to all our distinguished resource persons and panelists for generously sharing not only your expertise, but also your valuable insights and experiences on these important issues. Throughout today's discussions, we have been reminded that transportation is far more than simply moving people from one place to another. It is a public service that connects people to opportunities, strengthens communities, and ultimately reflects the quality of governance experienced by every Filipino. Perhaps our most important realization today is that building better transport systems is not only about charting new routes or expanding infrastructure. It is also about ensuring that voices of commuters help point us in the right direction. After all, the people who navigate these systems every day are often the ones who know best where the roadblocks lie. For us in the legislative community, this underscores an important responsibility to craft policies and legislation that ensure public voices shape decision-making. We must not settle for less. So should every Filipino. Thank you, everyone, and I now return the floor to our host, Ice.
Thank you, Attorney Panoncillo, for guiding us through today's insightful discussions and exchange of ideas. Before we proceed to the synthesis, we have a short activity for our participants, just so we can hear from all of you one more time. For our Zoom participants, you may scan the QR code flash on the screen, and for our viewers joining us via Facebook Live, you may share your responses in the comment section. For our question of the day, in one word, what principle should move Philippine public transportation forward? Again, in one word, what principle should move Philippine public transportation forward? You may now scan the QR code. Give you a few moments to reflect and submit your responses. Alright, so we see Flash on our screen is service. We have also accessibility, adaptability, modernization, we have innovation, and then people-centered, efficiency. All right, so we also have reliability, service. Okay, so I think that's all for your responses and input. Thank you everyone for joining our quick activity. As you can see, our top responses is efficiency, sustainability, accessibility, and innovation. And now to provide his synthesis of today's discussion and help us bring together the key themes and insights that emerged throughout the afternoon, may we once again call our moderator, Attorney Panoncillo. Sir, the floor is yours.
First of all, allow me to thank the Development Academy of the Philippines for inviting me in this very important gathering. Likewise, I would like to thank our speakers, panelists, and participants for making this forum a productive venue of exchanging ideas. This afternoon, we had the pleasure of listening from different perspectives posed by our speakers. The lecture's theme emphasizes the need for citizen involvement not only in the formulation of transportation policies, but also in their implementation. Let me continue by asking this question. Why do ordinary Filipinos, myself included, want to own a vehicle? In the past, car ownership was considered a status symbol. Nowadays, it has become a necessity due to lack of accessible, efficient, reliable, and safe mass transport system. Yet, what we once believed to be the solution to our shared struggles has, in reality, transformed us into a car-centric society. According to a 2017 JICA survey, traffic congestion in Metro Manila alone was estimated to cost 3.5 billion pesos per day, a figure projected to rise to 5.4 billion pesos daily by 2035 if no interventions are made. This 3.5 billion pesos daily loss marks a sharp increase from the 2.4 billion pesos estimated in JICA's 2012 infrastructure roadmap. If there's one key takeaway from this afternoon's discussion, it is the vital role of public participation. Behind every success story shared by our speakers lies a robust feedback mechanism designed to give citizens a voice in the decisions affecting their lives. Dr. Guillen emphasized that good governance relies on citizen participation to create responsive transport policies. She discussed overcoming barriers to public feedback and shared success stories where continuous public engagement catalyzed better transport infrastructure. Mr. Kimura highlighted international best practices based on his extensive experience, emphasizing that stakeholder engagement must be an integral part of every stage, from planning, design, implementation, as well as operation of transport sector development. Director Mendoza stressed the government's need to learn and adapt to changing commuter needs. She explained how the DOTR uses feedback mechanism to transform citizens' lived experiences into improved public policies. Director Bernadette focused on the crucial role of local government units and their grassroots public engagement. She shared how Quezon City utilized technical evidence, stakeholder collaboration, and feedback loops to successfully resolve local transport issues. And finally, Director Mariano underlined the vital role of non-government organizations and advocacy groups, noting their involvement is key to crafting balanced, responsive, and people-centered transport policies. One realization I have after this discussion is that we don't lack feedback channels. Mechanisms like public hearings, surveys, consultations, and even the social media are already built or recognized by our system, be it in legislation, planning, or implementation of policies. Perhaps a real challenge is persuading our policymakers to embrace evidence-based ideas as vital inputs for decision-making. To achieve this, we need an effective feedback mechanism. And that mechanism must have the following essential elements. First is the manner of presenting the feedback or idea. Citizen feedback, including complaints and opinions, must be presented in clear and equivocal terms and supported by facts. Its immediate implications and long-term impacts must be presented alongside viable policy options that can effectively guide our policy makers. Second is timing. Policy making comprises several stages, some of which require technical expertise more than public opinion. As such, we must be critical on when or at what stage policy making or input should come in. And because it is a continuous process, an effective feedback mechanism must operate not only during formulation, but also throughout implementation. And last but not the least, representation. To gain more attention, citizen feedback must be channeled through individuals or groups of unquestionable integrity and deep expertise in the subject matter. In an era of rapid technological advancement, particularly the rise of artificial intelligence, the credibility of those providing feedback is paramount in validating the legitimacy of both the information and its source. In closing, I want to reiterate that lived experiences and citizen feedback must carry greater weight as practical benchmarks in policy making. However, to ensure that our policies are truly objective and responsive, this public input must be carefully balanced against prevailing socioeconomic and political realities. I am hoping that my 2 cents, combined with the perspectives of our resource persons and the engaging questions from our participants, has made today's discussion more enlightening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Panoncillo, for your synthesis of today's discussion. As we conclude today's lecture, we hope today's conversations have encouraged us to look at transportation through a broader lens. Beyond roads, railways, and infrastructure, we have been reminded that responsive transport systems are also built by listening to the people who rely on them every day. Today's exchange also showed us the value of bringing together different voices. By hearing perspectives from the academe, international organizations, government, civil society, and the development sector, we were reminded that the meaningful solutions are rarely built in isolation. They are strengthened through collaboration, dialogue, and the willingness to learn from one another. Of course, none of today's conversations would have been possible without the generosity, expertise, and valuable insights shared by our speakers and panelists. We are likewise deeply grateful to our moderator, Attorney John Francis Panoncillo, for skillfully facilitating today's discussions and helping us navigate the many perspectives that enrich this afternoon's exchange. With that, the Development Academy of the Philippines, through the Capability Building on Innovative Leadership for Legislative Staff program, would like to present our tokens of appreciation to our distinguished speaker, panelists, and moderator. May I invite our Director of the Policy Research Office, Mr. Gilbert Lamantao, and Ms. Nina Raffer, one of the component manager of Thursday Talk series, to join us in presenting our tokens of appreciation. Director Nessa Mendoza of the Department of Transportation, Ms. Aliana May Bernadette of the Quezon City Government, and our final panelist, Director Patricia Mariano of Alt Mobility PH. And of course, our moderator, Attorney John Francis Panuncillo from the Philippine Congress. Alright, so take a photo first of our resource persons and panelists. Okay. Okay, next, we can't miss this, of course. Let us take our class photo. May I invite everyone to joining us via Zoom to kindly turn on your cameras and smile. We'll be taking several snapshots to make sure we capture everyone across our gallery. So I think we have how many galleries? So I'll just count na lang po, and then, okay, on the count of 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, for our next panel. 1, 2, 3, smile. Another panel po. On the 3, okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Our fourth panel. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. And last, 1, 2, 3, smile. Alright. You may now take your seats. Once again, thank you to our distinguished speakers, moderator, and all of our participants for making today's session a meaningful and enriching exchange. Closing remarks, I would like to call on stage once again Director Gilbert Lumangtao.
Today is our last episode of the Civils lecture series, so allow us a little bit of time to close. And I'd like to thank the resource persons first, especially the ones we have today, for sharing your expertise and in our lectures and allowing us to organize discussions on various socio-political, economic issues that resonate with our people. We thank you for coming, especially today, kasi our audience are only online. No? First, also, we would like to thank our scholars and lecture participants who are attending this year's lecture series, especially this last one. And we thank the Senate of the Philippines, as well as the House of Representatives, for being our very supportive partners in this program, which is allowing us to implement the CBIL since 2018. As we formally end the final lecture today, let me give a quick recap of the Thursday talks. In this series, our theme is forging future ahead institutional reforms amidst the changing global order. And it underscores the importance and strengthening of institutions to advance reforms and promise inclusive policies to better cater to the future needs of the Filipino people in an evolving global geopolitical economic landscape. So the first Thursday talks held last April 16 at Sikia Hotel. We walked us through the very foundation of any democratic institution, people's representation. It revisited the original intent of the Philippine party list system to amplify and bring the voices of the Filipino people into legislation and emphasize the vulnerabilities of our legislative and political systems that have allowed and continue to perpetuate the influence and power of dynasties and vested interests over marginalized and underrepresented sectors. True to this year's theme, the discussion underscored the imperative to reform the 31-year-old law of the party list system to reclaim the right of the people for genuine representation. The second lecture, this lecture was followed by a webinar held last June 18, which explained the repercussions of the Middle East conflict in the Philippines. And in this episode, we were made to realize that alongside the impact of felt by Filipinos abroad from geopolitical and economic tensions, we here at home eventually feel the effects of these ruptures on our shores, ultimately pointing out the vulnerabilities of our country in safeguarding and securing resources at the macro and micro levels. In particular, the episode emphasized how valuable energy security is and how our dependence on imported sources and lack of domestic reserves have negatively impacted the economic activities of industries and prices of fuel and food. Ultimately, in this changing global order, the Philippines, despite becoming an upper middle income economy, must by all means strengthen political and socio-economic institutions to caution the effects of shocks and vulnerabilities arising from conflicts and other global developments. Today, we conclude the three-part series on a topic close to the heart of the Filipino public transport, of the Filipinos, the public transportation. In many ways, our final lecture brings together the central themes of our previous episodes. The first lecture reminded us that the effective governance begins with genuine representation, while our second lecture highlighted the need for resilient institutions amid an increasingly complex world. This afternoon session demonstrates how these principles come to life in a policy issue that affects millions of Filipinos every day. As the recent Middle East conflict has shown us, our transportation systems and the people who rely on them are vulnerable to external shocks. And responding to these challenges and to the many others that will come requires more than just reactive measures. It requires institutions that adapt and truly listen. With that, this third lecture put forward the importance of people at the center of transportation planning to bring better, more dignified, and more inclusive urban transit for everyone. We hope that all who participated in our lectures have learned and gained insights on the discussions. May this contribute as one of the many platforms we use in intellectual and policy conversations rooted in realities as we face almost different capacities to withstand such changes in our environment. Thank you, and mabuhay tayong lahat.
Very much, Director Lumantao, for not only wrapping up today's lecture, but also bringing our 2026 Thursday Talk series to a meaningful close. On behalf of the Development Academy of the Philippines, we once again extend our sincere appreciation to our distinguished guests, our CIVIL scholars, participants joining us via Zoom, and everyone tuning in through our Facebook live stream. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and contributing to today's rich and meaningful discussion. We also extend our gratitude to the colleagues at the Development Academy of the Philippines whose dedication behind the scenes, from the program management and logistics to technical operations, communications, and audience engagement, help make today's lecture possible. Finally, we express our heartfelt appreciation to our valued partners from the Senate of the Philippines and the House of Representatives for their continued trust and support for the CBILS program and for their shared commitment to providing meaningful learning opportunities for the legislative community. Well, we have arrived now at the final stop of today's journey, and with it, the conclusions of this year's Thursday Talk series. To our dear audience, the evaluation form is now being flashed on your screens. We kindly invite everyone to take a few moments to accomplish the form and share your feedback on today's session. Your responses are invaluable in helping CBILS program to continuously enhance the quality and relevance of our learning activities. To our CBILS senior leaders, please watch out for an advisory from your learning manager. For our online participants from the Senate of the Philippines and the House of Representatives, please expect a post-lecture advisory to be sent to your registered email addresses by Monday, July 20. Participants who complete the form may request a copy of today's presentation materials subject to the approval of our resource persons. Once again, I am Danielisa Zambrano, and it has been my pleasure to serve as your host this afternoon. On behalf of the Development Academy of the Philippines and the entire CBILS program, thank you for your active participation and thoughtful engagement throughout today's session. We hope to see you again in the upcoming CBILS conference in December, and may today's discussions help us move from good ideas to better policies, and from point A to point B better. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.